Okay, over to the Chairman of the Planning Committee, Councillor Richard Dallin.
Thank you and good afternoon. Welcome to the August meeting of the South Northamptonshire Council Planning Committee. We have quite a long agenda, a varied one, which I hope you'll be able to follow with us. If you care to go to the South Northampton Council website, and you can then find the agenda on the under council listings. So we start off, as is customary, with apologies for absence and the appointment of substitute members. And I'll ask Leslie Farrell from our Democratic Services, what news of those?
We don't have any apologies for absence this afternoon. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is declarations of interest. I will personally declare personal non-pecuniary, personal and non-prejudicial interest in item 12 on the agenda. I call to see to other my toaster colleagues if you would be doing the same. Councillor Johns?
Yes, I will, Chairman. I'd like to declare non-pecuniary interest in item 12.
And Councillor Samiotis, please. Councillor Samiotis, can you hear us?
I do apologise. Yes, item, sorry, lost my track, 12, non-pecuniary interest.
Yep, thank you very much indeed. Do we have any other declarations of interest? Councillor Hollowell, please. If you could unmute your microphone.
Yes, my usual declaration in all matters concerning archaeology.
I'm grateful, thank you very much. Item 3 on our agenda is the minutes. This is to confirm the minutes of the meeting that was held remotely on the 9th of July. Is it your wish that these minutes are signed as a correct record, please?
Agreed.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, and they will be in due course. We go on to item 4, which is the Chairman's announcements. Well, as you will gather, we are once more remote, even though it appears as though I'm at the Forum, which is the building where the SNC operates from, but virtual communication enables me to be here, there and everywhere. But it remains to be remote, and this is how it's going to be for the foreseeable future, which means to say, in terms of the protocol for those people who can take part from outside our committee, we allow speakers to either record their message to the committee, which lasts for 3 minutes, or they can submit a written statement, which I as chairman will read. This afternoon I do have a written statement from one of those who is involved in one of the applications. That is all I need to say as far as for the chairman's announcements, except obviously if anybody has got a mobile phone on, would you switch it off or at least put it on mute so that it doesn't distract us. Also, final point, to mute your microphones on the Zoom connection unless you are speaking, and indicate if you wish to speak with the usual way. All right, item 5, proposed pre-committee site visits. Well, we do have none ahead of us, and this is due to the continued COVID-19 and social distancing measures. As and when they change, then there will be the opportunity for site visits, but as at the moment, there is no such opportunity. Right, we go to our planning applications. The first one is item 6 on our agenda. This is South Northampton, Burkett House, Burkett Road, here in Towcester. And I'll call upon the case officer, Daniel Callis, to talk us through this one, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen. Sorry, Chairman, I've had a message come up saying the host has disabled participant screen sharing.
Well, maybe the host can enable it to happen. We have a few technicalities from time to time. Can we see if that's possible, please?
No problem. I'll just have a look at that. Bear with me.
Thank you. So what you're due to see will be the pictures and plans for each application as it goes through, and the officer normally shares the screen.
Okay, try now.
Callis?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, that appears to be working. If I can share my screen. Okay, so can everybody see an aerial photograph?
Yes.
Excellent. Right. So thank you, Chairman. Item 6 is an application for the demolition of an existing office building and the erection in its place of a 3-storey block of flats containing 20 units. The site is located in Burkett Road in Towcester. To the south of the site is the BAE Systems commercial building, which is the large white roof you can see in the aerial. To the east or rear of the site is the site of the Farriers Court development by Bellway Homes, which is currently under construction. This includes a complex of new B1 light industrial incubator units, which are immediately to the rear of the site. You can see with the hand indicating on the screen. If I just show you some photos of the site, this is the existing site frontage with Burkett Road on the right hand side, and the existing office building you can see on the left hand side, 2-storey building. You can also see the existing trees in the foreground, which are subject to a tree preservation order. This is the northern boundary of the site, looking towards the adjacent properties in Plessy Close. And a view from that same position looking further to the right, and you can see some of the properties back onto the northern edge of the site there. And then a view taken slightly further back towards the same boundary, and the tree that you can see, the silver birch on the left hand side, is due to be felled as part of the development. So in terms of the proposed site layout, the new building stands further forward than the existing. As you will have seen from the photographs, the building is currently set back within the site with the car park both in front and behind. In this instance, the building will come up closer to the retained trees and the parking will be provided to the rear of the building. The protected trees and the hedgerow at the front of the site are to be retained. Of the 20 units, 12 will be shared ownership affordable units, and 8 will be private market units. The car park provides 2 spaces per flat, and the proposal also includes a covered cycle store and covered communal bin store, which is adjacent to the site access here. Vehicular access is via the new access road to the right-hand side between the site and the BAE Systems building that goes through to the Bellway development behind. Pedestrian access to the building is both from the front off Burkett Road and from the rear via the car park. The elevations of the building show a 3-storey flat roof structure of contemporary design. The proposals include subtle brick detailing, which add texture and relief to the elevation. There are dark framed windows and an open brick framework structure on the top floor at the northern end. This is an open structure with no roof. The roof itself is flat, has no balconies or resident access, and will be used for the positioning of plant and for building maintenance only. So in terms of the ground floor and first floor both contain 8 flats, and the second floor contains 4 flats. The bedroom windows on the rear are to be fixed shut. This is in relation to the noise mitigation issue that's highlighted in the report and is covered by conditions 16 and 18 on the recommendation in the written updates. The proposed cycle store you can see here and bin store are both designed to reflect the character of the principal building. Just to give some context to the site, this is the existing street view in Burkett Road. The building in question is on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, you can see the 3-storey apartments at Leeson Court. To the right of the building is the BAE Systems building. And this is the view of the development to the north of the site. And finally, a view of the existing office building. In terms of updates, the committee's attention is drawn to the written updates, and in particular the full list of proposed conditions outlined therein. In summary, the application is recommended for approval subject to the listed conditions, subject to the lead local flood authority removing its objection, and to the completion of a Section 106 agreement covering the heads of terms outlined in the committee report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Need. If you could now exit that screen so that we can see everybody else. Has anyone got any questions at this point they'd like to put to the officer on this? Councillor Hollowell.
Just one question, Daniel. It's on page 32, paragraph 715, which starts, I think, on 31. It's the last bullet point, which starts off something like the brick structure. I don't understand that paragraph at all. What's that all about?
Sorry, Councillor, could you repeat the paragraph reference number?
Yeah, so if you're on page 32, and it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th bullet point from the top.
I don't have the copy of the agenda. I have just my original report available at the moment.
It's the last bullet point before you go into Anglian Water.
I see, bear with me.
It's 7.15.
Yes, sorry, thank you. So it's in relation to the Crime Prevention Design Advisor's comments.
That's correct, yeah.
And it says the brick structure is to be
What
recommended.
brick structure? That's what I'm getting at. I don't understand.
I think this is in relation to the cycle store. Both the cycle store and the bin store as ancillary structures relating to the main building. And so essentially it's looking at the security of the cycle store building.
Okay, and I can understand then brick structure being more secure. Is that what they're getting at?
Yes, and then there's comments there relating to the doors. It's whether or not the doors would be locked, or it would be a generally open structure with the cycles secured indoors.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Chair, this is Ken Pritchard. I'm sorry, I haven't put my hand up because I'm having problems at the moment.
You're on the
question.
Okay, go ahead.
When you mentioned with regards to the back windows being permanently closed, what arrangements are being made for ventilation? Is there air conditioning or what? You know, it seems rather, to have windows permanently closed in today's environment, particularly when you look at sunny weather, it obviously needs some attention, or what actually is going to happen.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. So the condition relates only to the bedroom windows on the rear elevation, and that's because the noise source in the adjacent commercial building, the main issue is a nighttime issue and the effect that would have on people being able to sleep. So it doesn't affect the main living areas, and those doors and windows can be open. There are balconies on that elevation. There is a condition in the updates which requires a noise mitigation scheme, which would cover off the provisions for additional ventilation in lieu of the fact that those windows couldn't be open. So it could include mechanical ventilation or some other form of solution.
Councillor Pritchard.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. In the absence of any other questions that I
I've
can...
had my hand up for 5 minutes, Chairman.
Oh, how could I have missed you? Councillor Bignell, please, yes.
Yeah, with respect to the open space on the roof, which is designed for plant, is there any screening for such plants? If you're going to put like aircon units or whatever plant on the roof, you've got open brick structure. Is there going to be some screening around that plant to detract from its appearance, please?
There's no screening as such, but it would be on the top of a 2-storey building. So from ground level, unless that plant was right, immediately adjacent to the edge of the building, the form of the building would screen it from view at ground level.
Councillor Bignell.
Not overly convinced because I mean, plant is plant. It goes on the roof. You know, it could come towards the front of the building. Depends on the amount of plant. It just that shot you showed us of the open structure, which is fine. But if you start cluttering it up with plant on the roof and water processing things like that, but I just thought we could have some screening around it. You know, some close boarded something or other to hide the plant away. Personally,
I think that possibly putting screening around the plant may have the unintended impact of drawing more attention to the presence of something on the roof. But what we could seek to do is, if members so wished, include a condition that required the prior approval of any plant before it was installed, so that officers could ensure it was positioned appropriately to minimise its visual impact.
great, thank you.
All right. Now, Councillor Johns put his hand up, then it went away again. I don't know whether he wants to say something. Do you?
I do, Chairman. I want to pick up on the issue of the proposed locked windows, but also on the infrastructure on the roof. I mean, would it be visible from the upper floors of Leeson Court? I mean, presumably it wouldn't be visible from the street level, but diagonally opposite, you have a 2 or 3 story building. But also, I just want to pick up on what's being proposed to compensate for the windows being sealed in terms of ventilation. I mean, it does strike me again as being odd that we can only design a building habitable if we seal the windows because of its proximity to ventilation systems from an adjacent factory. You know, we've had problems in Towcester in the past where the now defunct factory on Water Lane had the same issues with residents of Clare Crescent. Yeah, I'd be interested to know what's being proposed, and is this a condition?
Daniel?
Thank you, Chairman. So in relation to the first point, yes, I suppose from the upper floors of Leeson Close, there would be a view, given that that is a 3-story building looking across at the roof of a 2-story building. So there may be some private views of the plant. However, obviously the primary consideration is going to be views from the public realm and how that impacts upon the street scene. In relation to the bedroom windows, there is no detail on the proposal at the moment, but that is covered by the condition that requires this to be submitted before work commences, and therefore it will be dealt with in consultation with environmental health colleagues at that time. But environmental health colleagues have not raised objection to the proposal as it stands, provided that these conditions are included.
Councillor Jones?
Unless we know what the condition, what conditions there are, it's very difficult to determine whether they're suitable.
The conditions are listed in the written updates which have been circulated, I believe.
Sorry, and they would mitigate against the windows being sealed.
Yeah, so it would be there would need to be a comprehensive scheme of mitigation to address the impact of the noise and the sealing of the windows. That information would need to come in at a later date.
Yeah, I understand that, but what concerns me is we often get this as planning that things are suggested, but are they? Is it just something that will be fudged later on? I mean, is it technically possible to mitigate with ventilation?
The comments we've had from environmental health suggest that they're confident there is a scheme that would achieve a satisfactory outcome.
All right, well, we'll pause on that one. I've seen some other people like to speak. It's either Councillor Paul or Elaine Wiltshire, whichever of you wishes to speak. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. If we go back to the beginning, because I'm getting a little confused here. Daniel keeps referring to the building as a 2-story building, but according to the proposal, it's a 3-story building. In addition, the plant, is that going to be fitted to the 3rd story or to the open plan part, which is above the 2nd story and adjacent to the 3rd story? I'm really getting quite confused.
Okay, if I can come back just to clarify. So if I possibly just share my screen again, bear with me. So if everyone can see the elevation here, this is the street scene elevation, which includes the existing trees to give a better idea as to how the building would actually appear. And yes, the structure overall is 3 stories, but it's not 3 stories in its entirety. So the second floor is only approximately half or 2/3 of the footprint of the building, as you can see here. It's the central section. The plant, as is indicated on the plan, would be tucked into the corners either side of the 3-story element, so away from either end of the building, and both also set back from the front and rear elevations.
Councillor Wiltshire.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. That clarifies it.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, Councillor Bignell, you've put your hand up again.
Apologies, Chairman, I haven't taken it down from the last time.
Oh, well, you see, I wanted to make sure I didn't miss you this time. Okay, Councillor Townsend, I can see you waving to me.
Good. Whoopsie, sorry. Yeah, this top thing. I mean, I agree with Councillor Johns about the. It's very unsatisfactory to have a new building with having to not have open air for sleeping. And that is that going to affect all the flats, or is it just some? And as far as the top goes, again, I think it used to be a design thing. I can't quite understand what the sort of thing on the left is, where it sort of looks like sort of as if it's a bit of a sort of bomb site or something on the left. It's sort of what's the point of it? And if we're designing a thing for a flat roof, have we got any solar panels as well? Add to what might go on there. But you know, this is a new building, and this is the point at which these design items need to be sorted out before it's too late.
Daniel?
Okay, thank you, Chairman. If I could just respond on those. So the impact in terms of the ceiling of the windows, it affects half of the units, because half of the units have their windows onto the front elevation, Burkett Road, and half the units have their windows onto the car park. So it's only those units on the car park, but it is half of them. In terms of the structure that you could see, again, I'll share my screen just so everyone can see it. But it is an open structure. It's essentially just a framework. So the white areas you can see are open air, you know, that there is nothing in there. It is literally just an open structure. So you would have the beam across the top, the piers, and then that would be replicated on the side and the rear. There is no roof within that. It's an open framework, and it's included to add visual interest to the building, and you know, to be a individual feature of it. Thank you, Chairman.
I don't know whether you want to say something about that, Councillor Townsend.
Well, I mean, I haven't got to the solar possibility.
No,
of
we
solar
haven't answered
panels.
the solar panels bit. You're quite right. What, Daniel?
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, I missed that one.
Yes.
Yeah, there's no proposals for solar panels on here. The submission does mention the possibility of solar panels, but it's not actually formally included in the proposal as it stands. It would potentially be possible to fit them on, but it would. I don't know what much more I can say, given that it's not part of the proposal at the moment.
Well, Councillor Hollowell, you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I really echo what Councillor Townsend has just said. I don't really like the idea of locked windows. I think it's, you know, there's a health and safety issue. I understand why. I understand where Environment Health are coming from with the possibility of noise. But you know, I think if the windows were made of the correct grade of glass, you know, triple glazed or whatever, I don't see why they shouldn't open. And it's then up to the, you know, the applicants, the tenants to either have them open and have fresh air and a bit of noise, or vice versa. And I also agree with Councillor Townsend's comments regarding solar panels. we've got a flat roof here crying out for solar panels, I would have thought. And I'm not really convinced about those strange features on the left-hand side, and I don't really think that adds anything to the overall design of the building at all, those two spaces, whatever they are.
Is this coming, a question coming here?
Well, sorry, Chair, I thought we drifted into
No,
the
no, we
debate.
haven't. No, we're still in the question stage. You know, I get rather annoyed about this. So have you got a question?
Well, I'll go through it again later.
All right. Well, if you haven't, then I'll go ask Councillor Wiltshire, who's still got a hand up, whether they want to have another question.
Yes, I'm still concerned about the elevations on the left with the wall features. In the light of all the very strong winds we've had in the last few months, and the whirlwind that we had, or tornado type whirlwind we had in Northampton last week, how secure is this wall going to be? Is it very safely secured with metal framework inside it, or is it just brick construction, please?
All right, that's a question. Fair enough. Daniel Callis.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, the building would have to be constructed in accordance with building regulations, which would ensure an adequate, robust structure. So, yes, I mean, I would assume it would have a steel core and then brickwork applied to the outside, but that would be a matter for building regs.
Well, we certainly don't want to assume things, do we, necessarily? But a point made there. Well, I think we're going to move into our discussions.
Chair, could I ask a question? It's Councillor Pritchard.
Oh, yes, all right. If you have to, yes.
With regards to knowing, some of the indications with regards to our future planning policy, and I don't know how it affects apartments, but is there or will there be any facilities for electric charging points for vehicles?
All right. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. That is covered in the conditions in the written updates. So there's the standard council condition requiring provision of ducting for electric vehicle charging. So I don't necessarily know if there would be electric vehicle charging points from the outset, but there would certainly be provision made for that to make it easier in future.
So, perhaps they're going to put ducting in, but surely if they're putting ducting in, they actually can put charging points in, surely.
Yes. Well, you've made the point there, Daniel, that they can. Let's hope they do, if we agree permission for this. Let's move on to our general...
Councillor Samiotis wanted to speak.
Oh, is this a question, Councillor Samiotis?
It is a question, yes.
Yeah.
I was wondering, Dan, is this a dark brick? Because it looks, in the design, it looks like it's quite dark brick. Yet, I mean, I don't know if that's just because they haven't decided on colour of brick yet, but all of the buildings around it are lighter coloured brick, and I'm just wondering if this just might make it look a bit factory-like, with it being such dark colours, and could the brick colour be changed to match the surrounding area?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So, yes, the colour images that we have in front of us are indicative. There's no set brick proposed, and there is a condition in the written updates which requires the submission and approval of a schedule of materials, but through which we would confirm the brick, and that would give us the opportunity to decide exactly what sort of colour or shade of brick was the most appropriate at that juncture.
All right, now I will just check. Nobody's got their hand up at the moment. Doesn't appear as though they have. So we will now move into the general discussion and the ward members' view first. Well, I'll bat first as one of the ward members, and having heard what people have said, also thinking about the application myself, it doesn't exactly appeal as an attractive contemporary building, and has more of a resemblance of a factory rather than a place that you'd wish to reside in. And taking into account also the ventilation issue, which has been raised by some members. So I have serious reservations about this application, but maybe my toaster colleagues would like to bat next and see what they say. Councillor Johns?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, it doesn't strike me as a particularly attractive structure at all, really. I must admit, I'd assumed that reading seeing the updates that the brickwork has been proposed, but I think the overall design, it's a bit Lego brick style, so I hardly would consider it cutting edge design. But I mean, it is a matter of aesthetics. Personally, I'm not particularly enamoured by it. But what does concern me is this issue of building modern flats in the centre of a small town with windows, bedroom windows that you can't have open because the noise would be such that you couldn't get a good night's sleep. There's also no amenity space whatsoever. We've all seen, I know the current situation may be extraordinary, but to have flats with sealed windows, no amenity space, it doesn't, I mean, whilst I support the concept of having this converted to housing, and I welcome the addition of affordable housing, although I would have preferred to see some with affordable rents. The overall package, I think, could be improved on, and I really prefer them to come back with something a little bit better than this, because it, as I say, from the design point of view, it's not great, and I think the end sort of holes, you know, sort of are somewhat strange. So I'll be interested to see other members may convince me that I'm wrong.
If I unmute my microphone, I will now say Councillor Semiotis to speak.
Yes, I agree with everything Martin said, actually. The thing is, you're coming into an area, and it is a bit of a mishmash anyway area, because you're coming from the older council houses, and then you've got Leeson Court on the right, you've got the new development on your left, and then you've got a factory, who knows how long that's going to be there for, and then you're going into a nicer part where you're going into, like, you've got the Wood Burcott close area, which is all like lighter brick with white window frames, and then you're going down into what is a very expensive residential area on the Wood Burcott estate, the new one now. I just think that it still looks like, it looks as if they don't need to actually knock the building down that's there already, and all they actually do is need to put some new windows in. It doesn't, the appearance of the building is not changing at all. It still looks like a factory, and I think they need to think about making it a little bit more pleasant from the outside, because you're going to have all those new houses at the back as well, and if you've got a really ugly building at the front, it just, you know, who wants to live there? You know, another thing about the windows, and we've had these conversations before with various other buildings, locked sealed windows to me are dangerous, and if the person living there has a choice, they can shut the window if they don't want the noise, or they can open it if they don't mind the noise. I don't think it should be up to the developer to decide. I think it'd be up to the person that's living there. I would never want to say, you know, my kids or any of my relatives to be living in a house where the windows are sealed, and I can't actually believe that this is actually legal. I mean, apparently it is, but I just don't think it should be, because it is a fire hazard in my opinion. So yes, I agree with everything that Martin said, and I do think it is not pleasing to look at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Councillor Semiotis. Well, away from Toaster, other members who'd like to put their, yes, Councillor Surgeon Brooke. If you could unmute your microphone first, please. Lovely, go ahead.
On now?
You are.
Am I right in thinking that if they want to, the new government rules says they can actually put on another 2 stories? And can you think of anything uglier than having 5 stories looking like that? Rhetorical question.
I'm going to say it's a rhetorical question as opposed to a question as such. All right, well, thank you for that. We won't get that answer because it's, as we say, a rhetorical question. Councillor Breeze.
Thank you, Chairman. It should be quite interesting to see the design code and the design aesthetics that the architects were looking for when they came up with this design, because actually in a curious kind of way, and from the limited photos we've seen, it actually fits in. I think depending on the color of the brick, as a building, it fits in with what's there. I'm concerned by the ventilation. I suspect that they'll end up being the affordable housing units, not for the open market. But seeing the design, it would be interesting to see the design code, not the design code, but the design aesthetics that the architects were working towards. I'm actually sorry now that I didn't hop in my car and have a look at the environs, because I wonder actually if it, and I'm looking at Google Maps now and Street Maps, whether it doesn't actually fit in with the existing sort of mixed use space that it finds itself in.
Well, that is a view. On the design code question or reference, Daniel Callis, have you got anything you want to sort of add on that? How they looked into this?
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, just unmuting there. Yes, I mean, I'm just trying to have a look through the design and access statement as we speak to see if they've referenced any local images. I don't believe they've actually provided any sort of inspiration type images as you would normally find in a design and access statement. To a certain extent, there's an element of reflection on the adjacent BAE Systems building, which is flat roofed and brick fronted. But other than that, I think it is just a contemporary approach to the site.
Yes, but they don't want to presumably build another factory, which if they're looking at the BAE system, would be doing. Right, somebody else wanted to, I can't see anybody else particularly asking to speak at this point. Yes, I can, sorry, Councillor Townsend, do apologise, go ahead.
Right. I mean, it's an interesting one, this, isn't it? Because this is an outline application, presumably, isn't it? And I mean, I think all of us are very happy the fact that it's going to be flats. I mean, I agree with Rebecca that the brickwork, it looks all right, but the overall is just, I think, is not really satisfactory. And the fact is, I mean, the question we have to answer is it good enough, or is it good enough to us approve, or is it bad enough for us to refuse and tell them to start again? I mean, in a way, I would be happy for this to be withdrawn and them to take in what we have, I think, quite valid points have been made, and they can come back with something better. But whether we want to do that, I don't know.
Well, are you suggesting you might put forward a proposal to that effect, Councillor Townsend?
I'm happy to do so. I mean, I think Toaster reps perhaps would be better at doing that because they can see what it is, but I would back that, that's certainly.
Well, all right, let me call upon Councillor Johns. Looking at me at the moment.
Well, I wouldn't be in favour of supporting the officer's recommendation on this. So any proposal that would give the opportunity for the applicant to come back with an alternative in terms of design, it does seem to me that the architect's brief seems to be look at the surrounding factories and come up with something that blends in. Well, frankly, we're designing a residential area, and it is predominantly residential. So that's what they should have been picking up on. I mean, I'm not greatly enamoured by Leeson Court, the other side of the road, but by comparison to what's being proposed here, it's far superior.
So is that a proposal,
Councillor
Johns?
Yeah.
Yes, all right, Councillor Bignell, coming to you next.
Yeah, I'll just put my bit in. I mean, compared to Leeson Court, I think it mirrors it quite reasonably well in terms of a building, and I'm not too uncomfortable the way it sits there. But the one thing that everybody's mentioned so far is these windows. I'm very uncomfortable having a place where the windows are locked. As Councillor Samuelson says, I much prefer the people make their own choice what they do with their windows. If they want to shut the sound out, that's up to them. And I wouldn't support some, but that's the only thing I object to is the locked windows personally.
All right, Councillor. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hollowell next. And if you could unmute yourself, please.
Sorry, I'm
No.
not going to repeat what I said earlier, but could we just talk policies now? It might save time. I'm looking, so I'm talking really to Daniel and to Paul as much as anybody now. I'm looking at the local plan part 2, policy SS2, 1B, 1F, and 1G, and consequently 2. of SS2. And I'm also looking at MPPF paragraph 127, part B. If anyone wants me to read those, I will do.
I think it might be helpful because those of us who haven't got this script in front of us.
Okay, local plan part 2, policy SS2. Planning permission will be granted where the proposed development uses a design-led approach to demonstrate compatibility and integration with its surroundings and the distinctive local character of the area in terms of type, scale, massing, siting, form, design, materials and details, and F, will result in a good standard of amenity for its future occupiers in terms of privacy, sunlight, daylight, outlook, natural ventilation, noise, odour and vibration, and will not unacceptably harm the amenity of occupiers and users of neighbouring properties and the area through noise, odour, vibration, overshadowing or result in loss of privacy, sunlight, daylight or outlook unless adequate mitigating measures are proposed and secured. And G, has appropriate regard to its effect on air quality and the effects of air quality on its future occupiers. And part 2 of SS2 says proposals that could contravene any of the above criteria will be refused unless outweighed by other material considerations. So that's the local plan part 2. And the MPPF 127 planning policies and decisions should ensure that developments B are visually attractive as a result of good architecture, layout, and appropriate and effective landscaping. So my question to officers is, do you think those policies are relevant to this application?
All right, Daniel.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, I think the policies Councillor Hollowell's listed would all be relevant, yes.
If I can just chip in as well. I think out of the policies that you've raised, I don't think SS2 1G is appropriate, which talks about air quality, which is normally aimed at things like air quality from traffic or things like that. That's not the issue here. It was more, as the councillors were raising, about ventilation into the rooms, which I think it was 1F that talked about that, and 127 of MPPF is also relevant. What I would just add in terms of picking up how the debate has been going, when I first saw the plans, I was a bit like, oh, is that right? But then when I looked at the context of the site and the adjacent BAE Systems building, I could see why the design was how it was, and it is something different. Sometimes it's good to go for something different rather than the normal run-of-the-mill designs that we do. And there is a real mixture of development down that road. And this is contemporary, unashamedly so, but also high quality contemporary with the brick detailing that's been proposed and mimicking the things of the BAE System buildings to a certain degree and creating almost a sense of place in that area, which is different to the rest. So I was a bit taken aback when I first saw it, but it's grown on me, and I think it's actually really quite good design and different design, and for me appropriate to that area. So that's something for you to bear in mind before you go to any vote. And then picking up on the issue, I share councillors' concerns about fixing windows shut. I don't think that's the right approach. It should be the choice of the homeowner, the person living there. If it is noisy, they can still open the window, but they've got the opportunity to shut it and still be ventilated, because the system's been put in place to make sure that's available to them. And I think through that condition that Dan suggested, that can be achieved. We give the appropriate mitigation measures through the thickness of the glass or the ventilation that's being proposed, so they have the choice. They can still live in their homes and not be affected by noise, or choose to be affected by noise and get ventilated. That's down to them. There's a way around that situation, is my point of view. But back to you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Chief Planning Officer there. And now, I'm mindful that Councillor Townsend raised the possibility of suggesting to Toaster members they might like to propose something that he was thinking about proposing. proposing. But before we get to that again, I see two people would like to speak. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you notice, I've managed to get back in again. One of the things actually that, as I say, I raised this first of all with regards to these fixed windows, is that is the noise that's coming from the adjacent industrial unit, is it quite loud? And also, does it actually exist 24/7?
All right, that's a question for you, Daniel Callis, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. So the adjacent building, I believe, sort of operates fairly unrestricted in terms of its hours of operation and the hours of operation of the plant. So the plant could affect at any time, plus the fact that the plant is often, working at night to maintain, consistent atmosphere or whatever within the building, even when things may be not occurring.
Is it a research development area or manufacturing?
I'm not entirely clear exactly what goes on there, but BAE Systems are, I think a fairly sort of high-tech manufacturing.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Daniel.
Okay, Chairman, sorry, if I can just very briefly respond. I mean, with regard to the issue with the windows, the concern of environmental health colleagues is that if occupants are allowed to have the windows open, it may therefore lead to complaints because of noise at night, which could result in therefore sanctions having to be placed upon BAE Systems, which could restrict the operation of that business. And I would point out it's not the developer who's asked for the windows to be shut, it's our own environmental health colleagues who've put that in. With regards to what Mr. Seckinson said about the condition, there is a condition on there, I think it's condition 18, which actually stipulates in the written updates actually stipulates the windows to be fixed shut. If members were minded to leave this more to occupants' discretion as to whether they have the windows open or not, then we would just need to remove that condition from the recommendation. And finally, just one very last point to make, which is that the developer does already have prior approval consent to convert the existing building into 12 units rather than 20 via Class O of the permitted development order, and that consent, just checked through, does not have any conditions relating to noise impact upon it.
All right, Councillor Bignell, you still wanted to ask a question or say something?
No, sorry, I keep forgetting to keep your hand down. Sorry.
All right, okay. Well, now, we were at the situation before we had those other points raised. Councillor Townsend mentioned his concern, his feeling perhaps we should ask for them to look at it again. And Councillor Johns, you were veering in that direction as to whether you were putting a proposal. That's really the point we're at, I think.
Excuse me, Chairman. Councillor Semiotis wanted to say something.
I do beg your pardon. Do say something, Councillor Semiotis.
That's okay. A couple of points. Going back to what Paul said about the factory, we don't know. Yes, it might match it now, but we don't know. And I don't actually think it does, to be honest, thinking about it. But, you could look 5 years down the line and that factory will also be knocked down to the ground to build more houses. So we're looking, I know we don't know what's going to happen, but chances are that's probably is going to be the case along that stretch because everything else seems to be happening down there. So I don't think we can take that into account. I think we need to look at what residentials there are down there and see what matches that, because the factory could go. Another thing, and I've gone completely blank. The BAE site, I'm pretty sure, does not operate throughout the evening. I'm pretty sure it's kind of like a 9 till 6 operation. And again, we can't say, there's going to be complaints. Somebody might complain about the noise. So what? Everybody's entitled to, they can complain, but I still think that we're putting people's lives at risk by allowing them not to be able to open their own windows and not having that choice. I just think that's an absolutely ridiculous statement. I'm sorry.
All right, well, thank you. So the situation we're in, and I think I'm going to go back to you, Councillor Johns, just are you prepared to put a proposal forward along the lines suggested by Councillor Townsend? If not, we have obviously got the original recommendation to vote
I mean, yes, I am. I think I take Mr. Secondland's point about, I think the architect has tried to pick up on design from the BAE Systems building, but the BAE Systems building isn't a building of merit. It hasn't got any listing. I would have preferred them to take account of the street scene and other aspects of Burcott Road, and therefore I would propose that well, we either defer with the option of the applicant coming back, or that we refuse based on the adverse effect on the street scene.
Well, would you want to pick which, defer or refuse? But need to be clear on this.
Well, I don't know if the applicant would be open to deferral. I haven't got a problem with the scale and massing of the building, and I haven't a problem with the building being brought forward towards the road. It's simply the current design. To me, it doesn't add to the street scene. In fact, it detracts from it.
I think we need to seek advice. Paul Seckington, I mean, it's either one or the other, defer or refuse on that basis. Do we know what?
Chairman,
go on.
Sorry, Chairman. Do you mind if I provide some advice at this point? So, what I've taken from the debate, in addition to what Councillor Johns has just said, that there's the concern about the potential for the plant on the roof not to look great. So my advice under that circumstance is it's a number of relatively detailed points, rather than a complete tear it up and start again type of exercise. So I would err towards recommending a deferral. The applicant should have a good understanding of what's required. We officers, I think, have a good understanding of what's required. So in the event that we're not able to reach an agreement, then we can refuse it, or the applicant can appeal when once is lapsed. So I think that's the easier pragmatic way of going about it.
Thank you. That's Jim Newton, Assistant Planning. Councillor Johns again.
So, Chairman, so my proposal is that we do defer, the applicant being made aware that we have no objections to the principle of developing flats on this site, or the size and scale, but we do have concerns about the street scene, and there's still the unresolved issue of sealed or windows that can be opened. So my proposal is we defer, Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that?
I agree.
Yeah, Councillor Townsend. All right. Well, in that case, Leslie Farrell is our Democratic Services Officer. Would you like to call the roll on this?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. So Councillor Johns has proposed that this application be deferred, and I've got it as it detracts from the street scene, and you don't disagree with the principle of the application, the size and scale. The concerns are around the street scene. So it's to be deferred. We're voting for the application to be deferred. So if I can just go around everybody, please. So if we start with Councillor Dallin.
Yes, I'm in favour. 4.
Councillor Pritchard.
I'm in favour. 4.
Councillor Bignell.
Against.
Councillor Breeze.
4.
Councillor Budden.
4.
Councillor Clark.
Councillor Clark may not be with us at the moment, just to intervene. She had to.
Right, yes. Councillor Cooper.
4.
Councillor Hollowell.
4.
Councillor Johns.
4.
Councillor Samiotis.
4.
Councillor Surgeson Brook.
4.
Councillor Townsend.
4.
Councillor Wiltshire. Sorry, Elaine Wiltshire.
4.
And Councillor Paul Wiltshire.
4.
That's been approved then, Chairman, so it's for the application to be deferred.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, well, we'll move on. Not much of a change of personnel. We go on to the next application, and Daniel Callis will talk us through this one as well. This is Toaster Vale, Phase 1, London Road in Toaster. Daniel Callis.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just share my screen again. So hopefully everyone can see the aerial photograph again.
Yes.
So item 7 is an application for reserve matters for 127 dwellings plus public open space and a play area on part of the ongoing Toaster South urban extension development. The application is for all reserve matters within the area outlined in red. The area to the north already has reserve matters consent and is currently under construction. The area to the northwest, in the area you can see with the large amount of trees within it, is the Wood Burkett Court development, currently under construction as well by Redrow. So just to give the site a bit of context within the overall development, you can see it's the area outlined in red. So most of this area to the north is either constructed or under construction, as is much of the area further north of Bess's Lane. And in relation to this site as well, it envelops part of the proposed primary school site, which you can see on the right-hand side of it here. So the layout shows how the site connects into the main, what will be the main spine road coming through, leading down from the existing development, and then the road on the right-hand side ultimately leads down to the what will be the relief road, and it provides a connection through the existing main internal distributor road in this part of the estate to connect with the main spine road. The school site you can see is the sort of empty white area in here. The proposal contains a mixture of 1, 2, 3 and 4 bedroom units. There are 11 affordable units, which is slightly under the 10% requirement for the scheme overall, but that provision will be achieved across the whole development, some areas having fractionally more or fractionally less. There are 2 separate clusters of affordable within those 11 units. There's one cluster of 4, which is in the middle here, and another cluster of 7 up towards the top end. In terms of example street scene, the house types on this parcel of land are all essentially the same as has been approved on 3 or 4 previous phases of development by Persimmon on this site, containing both a mixture of Persimmon units and Charles Church units. So the house types, the elevational detailing, the materials are all the same as we've had so far. Just to have a look in more detail at the landscaping, the proposal contains a small village green type piece of open space within the built form. This contains a play area within it. There's a small section of linking public open space between the 2 roads here. And then the principal area on this parcel is the continuation of the linear greenway that comes down from the previous area that was granted consent a couple of years ago, bringing it down this side of the site through to connect with the road. And this will also make provision for connection from this area through to the large area of open space that you can see indicated on the left-hand side of the screen. The area of trees at the bottom here are subject to a tree preservation order, and the plan also shows the retention of an existing important protected hedgerow adjacent to that, with a buffer and the footpath from the built area. And just to finish off, finally, details of the play equipment that's proposed. This is timber play equipment, but all the equipment does contain metal shoes to lift the timber from the ground and therefore reduce deterioration or rotting of the timber, as was requested by the Town Council. So with regard to updates, there are no updates for this item. The recommendation is for approval, subject to the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Anybody like to ask Mr. Callis a question on this? Yes, Councillor Johns.
Thank you, Chairman. Do we have the details on whether the play equipment will have what type of safety surfacing and what type of material on the proposed path network?
Thank you. So the safety surfacing is, I believe, the sort of rubber matting that sits within the grass, and that's what's coming through on the first play area, which is complete opposite the racecourse, and is, you know, sort of well hidden and screened into the grass so that it's not visually prominent. In terms of the footpaths, there's a Hoggin footpath, which is a continuation of the Hoggin footpath on the earlier phase coming down through here, and that is that would be the same within the village green area, and then you would have a tarmac path on the connection between the roads in the middle piece.
Can I just ask?
Yes, go on,
Dan. If that type of surfacing permits the use of wheelchairs.
It does, yes. I mean, Hoggin is basically a bound gravel surface, so it's quite a robust, you know, solid surface, but it's a permeable surface and has a softer appearance than tarmac. It does have an element of wear. There is a, you know, a small amount of granules come off the top, but relatively speaking, it's a made path.
Okay, Councillor Wiltshire, one of you wish to ask a question?
Yes, thank you, Chair. With regard to the new guidelines coming out from the government, are we going to have a lot of trees down the streets here, and are they going to be wide enough for all these trees that we need to be planting?
Somewhat of a broad question, but Daniel, do you want to have a go at that?
Thank you. Yes. Well, the street hierarchy on this development is principally dictated by the design code, which was approved approximately 4 years ago, four and a half years ago, and has you know, led on the street hierarchy and the design of the streets up until this point. You will see, hopefully, on the screen in front of you, it may be a bit. If I could zoom in. Oh, sorry, I could reshare my screen. There is a provision for some street trees within the more primary roads, so the main spine road and the secondary spine roads. However, the amount of trees that are actually achievable within the grass verge that's provided is dictated by the highway authority and what they are willing to accept, because they will not accept any trees which are within any form of pedestrian visibility splay or vehicle visibility splay. And actually, in truth, when you come to therefore see where you can fit them in, there's not always as many as you may hope initially.
Well, we'll have to make sure ministers are aware of that. Let us move on to a question with Councillor Pritchard.
Daniel, with regards to it's actually going back to my point I made with regards to the flats. Will these new houses have the facility of electric charging points in the garage?
There is no requirement on this development because the original outline consent was granted back in 2015. With the reserve matters, we haven't on previous phases been requiring the provision of that as an extra requirement because it's something you would normally put in the outline consent.
So can you confirm then, you know, if we say the remaining of the whole of this development, there'll be no requirement for the developer to put any electric charging points in any of the locations?
I'm not entirely sure that it's something we can add in at reserve matters stage, but it's not something that's required in the design code, which has set the parameters for the development and what the developer is required to achieve over the majority of those areas.
So there's no way that, even though we're actually up for, should we say, this is an application for planning approval to build these houses, we actually cannot insist, or in fact we cannot recommend they put these points in?
It's a discussion we would have to have with the developer. I mean, there will come a point, certainly, where it will be in developers' interests to provide this from a market point of view. In terms of where we're at the moment, it's something we can seek to include potentially, but I don't believe it's something that we can require because it's not something that's in the outline consent or the or in the design code.
Well, can I ask Jim Newton might like to comment on this as the head honcho, assistant director of planning and economy, because this is a fair point he's making here about these electric charging points and what pressure we can bring to bear, notwithstanding the outline approval has been given. Jim Newton.
It's in the adopted local plan part 2 policy, but as Mr. Callis has already said, where there's an outline already in place, then we can't compel them, I don't think. But having said that, I think every discussion I have with the developer about what are we looking for from a scheme, electric charging points comes up. If there's any area of flat roofs, then solar panels also comes up. So I think we are starting to have those conversations with developers whenever we get the opportunity. Recently Persimmon we've had quite a few negotiations with them about the Toaster South scheme. So I think we'll take this point on board, and we will talk to them about it.
Well, it's certainly, I think, a serious view that we hold, and given the council has a climate change policy, it would seem appropriate that we push these things vigorously with the developers. Now, the hands are still up on my screen for the Wiltshires and Councillor Pritchard. Do you have other questions, either of you? No? No, right. Well, Councillor, you've gone as well. That's fine. Okay. Well, not assuming there are no other questions. As is customary, the ward member, Councillor Samiotis, do you want to say something on this one?
Well, yes, I was going to ask a question. It's another fly in the ointment that we've been presented with of late, both from SNC and from the government, is cycling. And I'm just wondering, I'm assuming, given what you've said about electric car charging points, that there would be no way of now enabling cycle routes from the southern extension into Toaster, because we're being encouraged now to cycle more, and we're being asked as councillors, as council, to provide SNC with some ideas, and surely this could be a good starting point.
Well, yes. Daniel, what do you reckon?
Thank you, Chairman. The next item coming up is actually for an area of open space which will provide a strategic connection and therefore cycleway from the development into Toaster. So I'll show you that shortly. But with regard to the rest of the development, the street hierarchy and the street design, as I said, is led by the Highway Authority, and it's down to what they are willing to accept or willing to adopt ultimately on the road layout. What I would say is that the application for the adjacent Spine Road, which I showed you on the previous plan, the highways have now asked for a cycleway, a specific cycleway, to be provided on one side of the carriageway with the footpath, and that is something that Persimmon have agreed can be carried on through the rest of the development and with highways. But as I said, it's a highway matter, so we are largely led by the Highway Authority. Okay, well that's some encouragement anyway you voiced there. Councillor Johns, I'm a ward member. Anything more to add, really?
No, I support all the comments that have been made so far. I think it's good that to hear that the county are talking about incorporating cycleways into roads for the new development. As I say, because I agree with Councillor Samiotis, it does seem somewhat perverse that one part of the authority is asking for ideas for cycleways. We've got new development in place and nothing at this stage seemingly mentioning about cycling, but if Dan is correct on that, then I'm sure he is, and that's good news. And on that basis, Chairman, I propose that we accept the officer's recommendation.
Grant permission subject to conditions. Do I see a seconder? Councillor Samiotis, thank you very much indeed. Leslie Farrell, let's go around the table again, please.
Yes, so this is to accept the officer's recommendation.
Yeah.
I'll start off with yourself then, Chairman. Councillor Dunning.
4.
Councillor Pritchard.
4.
Councillor Bignell.
4.
Councillor Breeze.
4.
Councillor Budden.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Cooper.
4.
Councillor Hollowell.
4.
Councillor Johns.
4.
Councillor Samiotis.
4.
Councillor Surgeson Brooke.
4.
Councillor Townsend.
4.
Councillor Elaine Wiltshire.
4.
And Councillor Paul Wiltshire.
4.
That sounds like, I think.
It's unanimous. Yes, thank you, Chairman.
Good. All right. Thank you very much. Next one we go on to, which has already been anticipated by Daniel Callis, is another application down on the southern extension. So over to you again.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Share my screen once more. Okay, so item 8 is an application for reserve matters, again on the Towcester South SUE. The application is for all reserve matters within the area outlined in red. The area comprises a parcel of public open space in the northern corner of the extension, centred around the historic driveway to Parkview Stables. It will also provide a strategically important pedestrian and cycle connection between the overall development and the existing footpaths on the southwestern side, of the A5 adjacent to the corner of the site, which I'll indicate with the hand here. There is a wide pavement on the south side of the A5 that connects through into the existing pavements within the town. So the provision of this section of pathway will facilitate easy and safe access with the rest of the urban area. So in terms of the area that we have, there's 2 areas of TPO trees plus some individual TPO trees. Parkview Stables, which is the remnants of the old Parkview Lodge, is over just outside the site. Within the site, there is this island you may have seen previously, which is the electricity distribution site. So that's outside the site and fenced off, but will sit within the open space. So the driveway from Parkview comes down through the area of trees and out to the A5 here. This section is shared as a vehicular access to the electricity distribution centre site, and then there is also going to be a connection coming through on the south side. Again, just to give a bit more context as to where we are, northernmost corner of the site with the A5, and then the Burkett Road, which is also to the west, and the new Spine Road, which comes through this area here and ultimately links with the new roundabout opposite the racecourse. So in terms of the proposal, principally it's the retention of the existing trees with the TPOs, the cleaning up of those trees, dead wooding, clearing of overgrown undergrowth to create a more attractive public open space. The path connection, as I said, comes through from the point here, hugs the southern side of the open space. This would be a resin bound gravel path, so a solid bound surface that would function as both a path and a cycleway. And it would come along the edge of the existing, the area of housing which consent was granted for earlier this year. The frontage to the A5, which is currently a hedgerow with trees within, would be retained as is, but there would be additional fencing within that to bolster and give added security, as it were, to prevent unauthorised or unwanted breakthrough onto the main road. The driveway is retained and reflected with the provision of the new path coming through. There would be bollards provided here to prevent unauthorised vehicle access coming all the way through. And there would be strong overlooking of the public open space from the adjacent development that's already been granted consent. The area of housing on the left-hand side you can see is the remaining parcel which does not yet have reserve matters permission. So the southern section of this area contains, again, the retention of the TPO trees, plus the planting of a number of additional trees, a play area within this site. The cycleway footpath comes down to connect with the main spine road through the development, which will then allow people to access this along the principal internal route. And then the other paths which follow the desire lines across the open space will be, again, like a hog-in surface, which is a self-binding gravel. Finally, to finish, the play equipment, very similar to the last item, essentially the same range and timber with the metal shoes, again, to lift the timber clear of the ground. With regard to updates, members' attention is drawn to the written updates already circulated. With appropriately amended plans having now been received, the application is recommended for approval subject to the conditions outlined in the report. Thank you, Chairman.
Yep, thank you very much indeed. As you lose that screen, and we have a chance to ask you a question if we want to. Does anybody wish to do so? Councillor Johns, you've stuck your hand up. Yep. You're muted.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, the report says that. I mean, originally the person we commissioned, Quartet Design, to look at the open area was pretty damning of the proposals, but the report says that all the points that Quartet Design made have now been resolved. Does that also include the items listed on the letter dated the 17th of July?
Subsequent to that, the applicants submitted amended plans, which included, a whole range of relatively minor amendments, but the Quartet Design were reconsulted following on from that and raised no objection. The only comment I believe they did make, from memory, was just to question the guarantee that would come with timber play equipment. The lifespan of, expected lifespan of that.
Well, they made a few issues. Have these been resolved? And the first one was concern over the number of small canopy trees proposed within the space. A greater number of larger canopy trees and tree species are required. Has that now been satisfied?
It has, yes. Yeah, there's a large number of the species have been changed to much larger, ultimately larger trees, introduction of oak, the introduction of hawthorn, and other things that were requested by the landscape consultant.
After this date, the 17th of July?
Yes.
Okay. And the issue they raised about the timber?
Yeah, so the developers have confirmed that the timber equipment comes with a 15-year warranty from the manufacturer, who is a leading recognised manufacturer of play equipment.
Okay, right. Fine, thank you. Anybody else want to ask a question?
Yes, please.
Yes, you do. Right, go ahead, Councillor Semiotis.
So we've now got a footpath, correct me if I'm wrong, going adjacent to the A5, joining onto Jenkinson Road.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just a bit concerned. I mean, there should, for some reason, a footpath wasn't put in from the roundabout down to the Folly pub, if you like, or to Jenkinson Road. Right, so this should be kind of linking up now on this side of the road. Now,
there was no requirement for that in the original outline consent.
No, I realise that, but this has been a bit contentious since the houses have been built and people are playing chicken in the middle of the road with the A5 because they can't walk. So the houses are on one side of the road, the path is on the other side of the road, so people are having to cross the A5, bearing in mind the traffic is still like ploughing up there, like 40 miles an hour, and then obviously they're having to walk on the other side of the road. So what would stop somebody now wanting to cross the road further up the A5, still on the racecourse side, and now they want to cross over onto the path that's the new path? They're just going to, I think that's quite dangerous. So is there no way that we can now link that end of the site up? So Steve's shaking his head to this pathway, because it's just concerning that, you've got children and families having to cross this A5, but no pathway in between. Is there a link from that's the development that's already there. So say the development by the roundabout to this pathway in any way, shape or form, so that people don't have to cross onto the A5.
So just to clarify, so this new path is providing a connection which will mean that people on the new development no longer have to cross the A5 at all in order to access the middle of town. So they will be able to come out at this point I've indicated on the plan, and then take that short section of wide pavement through to Jenkinson Road, and then use the existing footpaths in Jenkinson Road and I can't remember off the top of my head the road that runs parallel with the A5 and access the town in that way without needing to cross the A5 at all, or until at least you get to the existing controlled crossings nearer the middle of town.
So you've actually got, so from the houses that have already been built, where the roundabout is, I'm going in, I'm turning right, there's a link there to get to the pavement on the A5 to walk down that side.
Yes, ultimately, yes. So once this is constructed, you will be able to walk from, say you're at the existing show homes, you'll be able to walk into the development, turn right along the Spine Road, and then you'll come to this point of this connection with the path, and you'll turn right again, and that will bring you out on the the near side, the correct side of the A5 without needing to cross it. Also, in the fullness of time, there will be the continuation of, well, it's constructed and not yet open, the continuation of that Spine Road through to Burkett Road, which will also allow people to walk and cycle through to the existing parts of the town that way as well.
Good, thank you.
When you say ultimately, what sort of timescale might you be talking about?
The Chairman, the threshold or the trigger point for that road being open is, off the top of my head, something like 512 units. So it's potentially a year or two away.
All right, we'll take care till then. Councillor Johns.
Yes, Dan, just picking up on that. So will this path you're talking about will give access to Jenkinson Road? Will that be lit?
There's no proposals for lighting on this path at the moment. It's not something that's been requested by Highways or Crime Prevention and Design Advisor. In fact, quite often Crime Prevention and Design Advisor, is opposed to lighting on paths at night time.
No, but can I draw that to their attention, given our local knowledge?
I mean, the only concern I've got is that we highlight it as a means of safely getting in from the new development to other parts of Towcester. But hopefully when schools go back in the autumn, students walking from Spon School, by the time you're into the autumn, it's dark by the time they'd be up at this point. Now, in other parts of Towcester, we deliberately don't have street lighting on areas of open space, but this is the only path that does connect. So there is a bit of concern. The other thing, I apologise, I meant to ask you before was, are there some more details about the screening of the electricity distribution site? Because obviously that's a fairly large structure.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I'll take up the last point first. The plans, I can reshare my screen, which may be easier if you bear with me. So the plans do show an area of tree planting and shrub planting around the majority of the perimeter of that. There is also existing vegetation around the perimeter of that compound, so it will be relative. I mean, it's not going to be easy to totally screen it, but it will be relatively well screened once that planting has matured. Certainly, with the fact that there's a lot more trees within that space as well now.
Have we got photos of the existing structure to judge that?
I don't have any sort of ground level photos. The aerial photo here, I mean, as you can see, the majority of the compound is at ground level. There's just some items of plant within that that stand taller, but I don't have any photos at the moment, unfortunately, to show you that. With regard to the lighting, as I said, in the fullness of time, there will be the road, the spine road, which connects through to Woodburkett Road, which will be lit, and that will provide, you know, a lit corridor for people walking during the hours of darkness. There is no provision on this connecting pathway. It, you know, it is something that potentially could be provided, possibly via condition.
Well, can we insert a condition, because it surely is a relevant point made by Councillor Johnson in terms of safety in the dark winter?
Certainly, Chairman. I mean, you know, if committee wish, then that condition, I believe, could be inserted, and we could seek details to be submitted and approved of the lighting prior to the you know, prior to the commencement on this, or prior to the path being open to the public.
Well, as chairman, I would suggest that that is what we do. If others are agreeable to that as an additional add-on. Do you want to go back to your losing that screen there, Daniel, so we can
Sorry, Chairman.
See everybody. So I mean, look, we've got this grant permission subject to these various conditions, but adding on that condition concerning lighting would seem to be a sensible one, and Councillor Johns raised the matter. So can I see somebody who might like to propose this application with those conditions? Yes, Councillor Johns, I see your hand.
I'm happy to propose on with that condition as a proviso, and I would also like to ensure that the that electricity distribution site is adequately screened, because, as I say, if this is an attractive area, and we don't want that to detract from it. And
No.
on that basis, I'm happy to propose that we support the officer's recommendation for approval.
Councillor Semiotis, would you care to second that? You would, thank you so much. Right, Leslie Farrell, over to you again.
Thank you, Chairman. So we're adding an extra condition in here, so it's to agree the officer's recommendation with the additional condition for lighting to be provided along the pathway.
Yeah.
Okay.
Could I ask the local members that consulted on, once we've got, you know, details on possible lighting?
Okay, Dan.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah, of course, Chairman. We will liaise with members.
I'm grateful. Right, back to you, Leslie.
Okay, so Councillor Dallin,
Yeah, 4.
Councillor Pritchard,
4.
Councillor Bignell,
4.
Councillor Breeze,
4.
Councillor Budden,
4.
Councillor Clark,
4.
Councillor Cooper,
4.
Councillor Hollywell,
4.
Councillor Johns,
4.
Councillor Samiotis,
4.
Councillor Sergeson Brook,
4.
Councillor Townsend,
4.
Councillor Elaine Wiltshire,
4.
and Councillor Paul Wiltshire.
4.
That's unanimous again. Thank you,
Indeed.
Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Well, we have a change of personnel for our next application. You may be pleased to hear. I know Daniel will have the rest now. We go on to item number 9. Let's get this right. This is item number 9. This is Selby Barnes, Caswell Road, Dunkirk. And Peter Gittins is the planning officer. So, Peter, if you'd like to go ahead and talk us through this, please.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen to start with, if you wouldn't mind. Can you all see the aerial photograph there now?
No.
No, let me try again. Is that any better?
Yep.
Yep, got it, fine. Okay, so this is a revised planning application for an industrial unit, a B1 light industrial unit that was granted permission in 2016. It's located, as you can see, to the south of a small industrial complex known as Selby Barnes, and then further to the north is the small hamlet of Littleworth. Yeah, so this was approved back in 2016 as to be part of the Selby Barnes development, and on the basis that it was needed by a local business for expansion, and it was justified on that basis. It's now proposed to separate this off as a separate planning unit with an access, with a separate access. Originally, it was to be accessed through the Selby Barnes development. Whilst the temporary access was proposed and also to the field, as part of the original application, it's now proposed to retain this access as a permanent arrangement. So we've got a separate entity, separate from the Selby Barnes development. I'll just put the block plan on. Can you all see that now? Yes.
Yeah, we can.
Yes, see the block plan. Fine. This is what's actually proposed now. They've stopped up the access from the Selby Barnes site to the north, and they're proposing a new access to the industrial unit, wide enough, a little wider, 7.3 meters wide, in order that it can be shared as a new field access, and that was to comply with highway requirements. It's also proposed to amend the design of the building. I'll just get the proposed elevations up. Relatively minor changes to the building, additional windows, changes in the openings at the rear, at the southwest elevation, and the cladding, the balance of the cladding is slightly altered. It might make better sense if I now just call up the original plans. You'll be able to see the difference between the two things as to what was originally approved and what is now proposed. If I zoom in on that little piece in the corner, you'll see that there was the original site access proposed through the Selby Barnes site. This is slightly different orientation, this plan. So that was as originally proposed, coming in from Selby Barnes, if you can see the little hand marker. And whilst an access was proposed here, it was to be field access, screened by a hedge, and only used temporarily for the construction of the unit. So it was very much something that was going to be integral to the Selby Barnes industrial park there, and justified on the basis of an expansion of an existing business. But nonetheless, there were no conditions on this approval restricting it to that original business, and so we're in a position now of looking at principally the change in the access arrangements and the alterations to the building. Okay. I think that's. Look, I'll just go to the floor plan as well, the proposed floor plan, because this is something that you'll hear a little later on. Originally, a two-storey building was proposed with the first floor. The other slight difference here is that the building is now, there are now a change in the layout to include on the first floor some workstations. This could have been done as part of the original approval, because as you don't need planning permission to change an internal layout in this way. And you must consider it, I mean, it's important, there's the 2016 consent here is a material fallback position. So you know, there's very little harm, in my view, over and above this original scheme, because the same intensity could have been achieved as part of the 2016 approval. So we're looking at change of access and some change to the appearance of the building. Okay, so I mean, on that basis, I recommend that the application's approved, subject to the conditions within the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. If you could just lose that screen so that we can have Fergus on screen once again. Thank you very much. We now go to questions anybody might have of the officer. Has anybody got any questions, please? Just looking down my list in front of me, and I can't see anybody putting their hand up. So,
I've put my hand up, Richard.
Pritchard, you've got your hand.
2 questions. Since its original approval, did the original applicant ever occupy this building?
No, it's in the process of being built. If I'll just share my screen again, just to give you a flavour of what we have, if I can.
Because you mentioned earlier on.
Can you see the photograph I have up there? No.
We can't. No.
No. Okay. Well, basically, I'm sorry about that, but basically, the building is in the process of construction. The roof's on, the walls are up. It's not been occupied to this point.
Because the thing is, you mentioned earlier on that this building was given consent because of the expansion of the applicant's business.
Yes, that's correct.
Is he still in business? Or was it actually just put forward as an application to extend the business, and then, hence this application has been revised?
Yes, I don't know the details of the applicant's circumstances. I have to confess, just that this building is no longer required for their purposes, because they're proposing a third party now use this building. I don't know what the background to that issue.
And the second question is: are there any limitations in the use of this building?
Yes, the building was approved originally for a B1 use, which is light industrial use, and that's conditioned in that way, and it's proposed to condition it again as part of this application to a B1 use, which is light industrial, not metal cutting, bashing and grinding. It's techie, light assembly, or could be office as well. That's part of the B1 use class.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Surgeson Brooke.
Yes, thank you very much indeed, Councillor. Councillor Surgeson Brooke, go ahead.
Yes, could I ask Mr. Barrett if he knows if there are any other examples when I'm afraid to say the legal department has obviously slipped up on tightening up these regulations, which we didn't want, which is completely against our policy.
Mr. Barrett, you're in the dock.
Not guilty. Well, we've not. We were not required to put any 106 agreements or what have you together for this. But even if we were, you would still have the situation where you've got a building that is up or nearly finished, certainly a long way forward, and completely, as far as we can tell, surplus to the current applicant's requirements. Now, whether that had been dealt with by a 106 agreement or by condition, I think you would have been hard pushed to have simply effectively said, sorry, you're just going to have the building there and let it sit there redundant and empty. Because the only people who could use it are a certain company. Quite apart from anything else, it's very difficult to be absolutely certain that if you are going to say this is for a particular person or company, that you can make that stick, because companies can have subsidiaries, individuals can move on or have friends or business colleagues who would use the premises. So yeah, as I say, guilty. We've done, and I speak for all the officers here, everything done with the best intentions, and I don't think we could have avoided this situation in all practical terms.
Councillor Surgeson Brooke, do you want to say anything else?
Yes, I do. I think in which case we, as councillors, must have learned a lesson that we must be very careful not giving planning permission for building people to expand in the countryside, when in fact they could perfectly well move somewhere else and buy a bigger building, because this could easily happen again.
Well, maybe we are learning lessons. We learn lessons all the time. Any other questions you want to put to Mr. Gittins, who's the officer for this? If you don't put your hand up electronically, that delays it slightly, but I can't see anybody who's doing that physically. All right, we move on. We have got a public speaker on this one. You sent us in a recording. This is David Steventon, who's a local resident. So if Leslie, if you'd like to play that recording for us now.
Sorry, we'll be with you in a moment.
All right.
Oh, it's not opening. There we go.
My name is David Steventon of Mulberry Barn, Littleworth. I addressed the committee when the original application was heard in 2016, where I suggested that it was against the council's own policy and also based on the information submitted that the business was not viable. The council has decided to approve the application without constraint. However, within a few months, the business contracted as I expected and the building was not required. The new application seeks to modify the building to gain more light, enable them to employ more people and also make the road access permanent. The applicant originally stated that a number of staff to be employed would be 21, but when challenged increased this to 30. However, the building layout submitted with the application shows 56 workstations. It is inevitable that if this business is successful, I hope that it is, it will expand in time to fill the building. Further drawings show 22 car parking spaces. However, if you overlay the building plan and the site plan, it can be seen that 4 of these spaces cannot be used. 2 will block off the delivery entrance and 2 will block what almost certainly will be designated a fire exit. So there could be 56 cars vying for 18 spaces, which will inevitably lead to parking on the Caswell Road, which is narrow, unlit, with no pavement. The National Highways Authority originally requested a full traffic survey to be carried out. However, for some reason, they have changed their minds. In any event, the Caswell Road is a dangerous road, especially at the Duncote end. Over the past 5 years, there have been at least 2 accidents requiring hospitalisation, 3 which have resulted in damage to our property, and countless other accidents and near misses. The applicant has the right to erect and occupy the building, gaining access via Selby Barns through their original approval. In fact, the building has been erected. However, it has been built to the design they are seeking approval of today, which I believe demonstrates a total disregard for the planning system. In the interest of road safety, I respectfully request that you turn down this application and ask for a full traffic survey to be carried out. Should you decide to approve it, I believe that it would not be unreasonable to place 2 constraints. 1, restrict the number of employees in the building to no more than 30. And secondly, that no cars will be parked on the Caswell Road. Thank you.
That was David Steventon, a local resident. I turn now to the local ward member who is unable to be with us, but has submitted a statement which I will read out. This is Councillor Charles Manners, the member for Kingthorne. And he says the following: we objected to the original application in 2016 when Andy Darcy then described the application as a finely balanced decision and was subsequently proved correct when the business went into receivership and the building was not required. The latest application, whilst aesthetically more pleasing, asks for the access to be permanent and suggests that they could employ 56 people by the number of workstations shown. The first application this year suggested 21 would be employed, but when challenged, increased this to 30 with 22 car parking spaces, which will be less in reality once access and fire escapes are taken into account. My reason for calling in this application is the impact this revised development will have on car movements in and around Greens Norton and Duncott, and potential car parking on the Caswell Road, which would be dangerous as the road has a history of accidents. We were disappointed that Highways did not insist a full traffic survey was carried out, having initially asked for this to take place. We would ask that if the committee does approve the application, there are conditions put in place which restrict the number of employees to 30 and that no cars are parked on the road. Ideally, we believe a full traffic survey should be carried out to establish the risks of the proposed application. The committee should be aware that the building has already been built to the new specification without planning permission, which antagonises law-abiding residents. Those are the remarks of Councillor Charles Manners, who is the local member. So perhaps we should now broaden the discussion. Who would like to say something on this topic, please, to start with? Any offers? Councillor Townsend.
I mean, it does seem to me, I don't know what lessons to be learned. There must be some lessons to be learned here. I can't remember. I don't think I was on the committee when you approved it originally. But all experience of these country out of town factories and work offices and things is that they attract a huge amount of cars, because every single person, the only way they ever get there. So if you have 30 employees, you are going to have 30 cars. Now, I would have to sympathise with the local people who are saying, you know, what are we doing about it? I mean, we just seem to, we look as though we're completely neutered on it, and yet I think the least we can do is to insist on a traffic survey. That's my opinion, anyway.
Thank you very much. Who else would like to join this discussion? I can't see any electronic hands raised in the air, so let me look around the scene. And Councillor Surgeon Brooke, I saw your hand move. You could just open your microphone again.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It gets worse and worse, because it wasn't even the original factory that appears to have started building. It sounds as if a new one moved in and started building without any planning permission. Again, I would very much like to refuse it, but it looks as if there's no way we can. So we really must learn more lessons.
Peter Giddens, do you want to come back on what's being said there?
Yes. Yeah, I'm also disappointed about the way that it's built out the new consent in terms of the windows and the openings. Although you have to consider, you know, the material effect of the difference in the windows and the design, and it's and I think it's fairly limited in terms of the difference between the two. In terms of the traffic survey, now when we had something approved initially in 2016, this is what we approved: something of this size with 2 floors with this potential, and this and the traffic. You know, I don't see how there's going to be a difference between the two because of that material fallback position. I think it would be unreasonable to request that the developer undertakes a full traffic survey in this instance because of that material fallback position, what they could do under the original consent. In terms of the number of employees, it's the same kind of issue. We have that fallback position, and it's difficult.
Well, what about the cars on the parks on the road? That was
yes. In terms of conditions, conditions in that way, it's not. You can't condition something that's controlled by other means. You can't put a planning condition on something that's controlled by other mechanisms. And parking on the road is controlled by traffic orders. So that complicates matters. You can't do that where you're going beyond. You know, you're going into the realms of some other means of control. So that's not a condition that we can impose, in my view. In terms of conditioning it down, conditioning into 30 employees, I mean that's a very not in my experience, having dealt with planning enforcement for many years, not an easily enforceable condition. I mean, when you turn up on site, how do you assess how many people are actually there? Are they part-time? Are they working from home? It prevents expansion. If 30 is okay, is 32 not okay? You know, this is the conditions where you're conditioning numbers are not enforceable for me.
Well, can you help us in any condition that might be included that could be relevant to the concerns of those who've expressed concerns?
I tried to condition it as carefully as I could in terms of the conditions that are already included within the proposed report. Within the report, I don't think I can help further in terms of numbers. I mean, we're requiring them to maintain the parking going forward. I was careful. You've got to be careful as well not to, I mean, I've put on conditions, dragged through the conditions that were relevant last time. If we put additional conditions on, that they've got to be justified. Very difficult. I have put an additional one on in terms of outside working arrangements, because I think that's important for noise, disturbance and storage and appearance in the countryside, because I think that's a relevant one that wasn't on the last occasion. But other than the conditions I have there, let me just turn up in relation to highways issues. External lighting, hours of operation we have, outside storage as I mentioned, removal of permitted development rights so it doesn't become anything else other than the B1 use, and retention of hedging, which was a common condition. I struggle to see how we can further control the numbers through a condition and the planning enforcement process.
No, well, I just thought I'd give you the chance to have a little.
Thank you. Yes, I mean, I welcome that, Chair. Yeah.
No. Any other members of the committee like to? Yes, Councillor Townsend, come back.
Well, just say, I mean, I am appalled by this application, and I just hope that the officers who've sat very quietly, that there are real lessons to be learned here. I mean, we've just been made to look absolute fools in front of the people who reside in Dunkard, and it makes me so angry. You know, we have this wonderful. It is manifestly was going out of the urban countryside, seems to have had no controls at all. We've made to look absolute fools.
Well, on that basis, how do we proceed now, Councillor Townsend?
Well, it doesn't seem to be very far, but I don't think I'm going to support this application.
I'm obliged. Paul Seckington from the Planning Department. Go
on. Thank you, Chair. I'll just run through quickly the background and the history. Obviously, we approved this building in this location 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it was, and at that time we did support it because of the expansion of the existing business on the site. That was one of the main reasons for it, but it was also the intensification and expansion of an existing business park as well, and it was also supported local business in the general sense as well. And yes, it's unfortunate that business then didn't carry on, but we did give a permission. There wasn't a conditional 106 that required it to be that business only. And how could you say that the visual impact and the impact of the building was fine when it was that person, but not when it's someone else, as Matthew alluded to earlier? It wouldn't have been appropriate to put that sort of condition on a new building. If I just share my screen quickly to show the photo that Peter couldn't show. So this is the building that has been erected, which is the same as the one that was approved, with the exception of alterations to the windows. So the building exists. It did have permission. They can fall back and change the windows in theory and be in line with that original permission. The only issue really that's before us is the change to the access. So this was going to be a field access only, or plus also during construction. They want to make that the main access in, and that is unfortunate. They're not sharing that access with the business park, but it's still adjacent to the business park, and there is no highways grounds to refusal. We queried it, we chased it. I raised a concern and asked Peter to chase them, and there was no real reason in highway safety terms of having an access into this part of the development here and a separate access to the remaining business park. We've also have to be mindful of policy EMP2 of the new local plan part 2. Part 3 of that policy says on existing employment, retail or commercial sites, employment generating development, including intensification, will normally be permitted within the existing curtilage or through appropriate extensions, subject to compliance with other policies in the plan and other material considerations. I'm also mindful of the comments that have been received from economic development when we consulted them. They support the proposal based on its existing employment land. I had that extant permission. It allows for the growth and diversification of local businesses. It increases the employment opportunities for local residents. It will benefit the local economy, and it aligns with the themes from the SNC economic growth strategy. If I conclude by saying that, yes, it is unfortunate that we didn't get what we thought we were getting, but we were still getting a building that will support the local economy and provide opportunities for local people with local jobs, and the visual impact will still be the same. The highway safety is slightly different and different impact, but still not adverse to recommend a reason of refusal. The visual changes to the building are minimal. So that's why we are recommending it for approval today.
Okay, Councillor Townsend's got his microphone unmuted, so you want to say something, I think.
Well, I mean, Mr. Secretary has made a brave attempt to salvage any reputation that those officers might have, but it does show to me the danger when we want to, when people come along and say they want to expand their business into open countryside. And this place obviously went belly side up quite quickly after the permission was given. And that was when the vast was sold. And of course, the economic development people always get to say, oh, wonderful, we'll expand everywhere. But actually, we should have been questioning this much more strongly, as was said by one of the speaker. I just think it's just a very poor show.
Well, we are where we are, as the phrase goes. Councillor Wiltshire, if one of you wants to say something.
Yes, thank you. When was the second access, the new access, actually installed? Was it on this plan, or was it on the original one? Because from what you're saying, it should have been through Selby Barnes estate.
Yes, I'll just reshare my screen if I can here. I want to show you the. Let me just get back to that original plans. Can you see the original plan, the original scheme now?
No.
How about now? You got it now. Great, thank you. Yes, the original. Suppose there's the access through Selby Barnes. If you look at the little hand, and this access was approved at the same time. It was approved as part of this scheme. It was erection of an industrial building together with a field access. Okay, so that's how that access came about. But it was only to be used temporarily, as I said earlier, for the construction of the building, and then a hedge was to be planted to separate it from the building, and it was just to be used as the field access, and the main access to the building, the only access to the building was to be coming through the Selby Barnes site.
Councillor Wiltshire?
Yes, okay. That's what I thought you said at the beginning, that it was only a temporary roadway through with a hedgerow. Can't we enforce them to use the other access and close that off? Because it makes to me that this building they're selling off to get rid of their debts on the other one, and really they should be using the whole estate.
Well, we don't know what their motives necessarily are, do we? But do you want to come back?
They should be using the whole estate. rather going through the whole estate.
Well,
rather
maybe,
than the
but
exit.
we're
Yes,
dealing
I
with
mean, yes, this is the main thrust of the application is to change the access point. This is the significant material issue here, that they want to use this revised access arrangement. This is the purpose of the application.
Councillor Paul Wiltshire.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is a thought rather than a question. I do wonder and slightly worry that if this permission is granted, the access, which is field access, are we then going to be faced in a year's time with further applications to develop the fields to enlarge this building? I just think this could be the thin end of a very big wedge.
Well, Southwell House Council will not be, I can guarantee, faced with that since it won't exist in a year's time. But be that as it may, Peter Giddins, do you want to come back?
Yes,
on that
I mean, we could get an application in, but I mean, it would be outside the development boundary. It would be an open countryside. You know, there's potential to resist that application.
Right, Councillor Pritchard, you've got your hand up. Councillor Pritchard? No, we don't seem to be able to hear you at the minute.
Sorry,
yeah, go on.
I'm actually back. Sorry about that. Obviously, I've listened to everything with regards to what has gone on with regards to, you know, perhaps the change of use or additional employees and so on and so forth. But I think we probably have to bring ourselves back to the situation where this application is only with regards to a new access. I don't particularly like some of the comments I've heard recently or agree with lots of the comments, but at the same token, I think we've just got to focus on this is a new separate access and we don't have really anything else that we actually can impose with regards to any of the issues that the councillors actually brought up.
Thank you very much. Matthew Barrett, solicitor, were you wanting to say something at this point? And can you unmute your microphone if you're going to? Yeah.
No. I was just, I'm just watching and seeing Councillor Johns waving his hand and smiling, and I'm no doubt thinking he's become invisible.
Well, I can see him as well now. So, Councillor Johns, your turn.
Cut off in my prime. Again, I mean, this is one of these applications that for anyone watching who hasn't seen the planning committee before will realise why members of the planning committee are very cynical. I do remember this application very vividly. And remember that place? Yes, the Forum. It seems a long time ago now, but yes. And I do recall that I was minded to refuse this application. The only thing that tipped the balance was the pleading that that this would retain a valued employer in our district, and then it was required for future economic viability of the company. Only then to learn that they never moved in. I mean, this isn't a sustainable location. Often we're told in Towcester some of our designated employment sites aren't suitable. And yet here we've got locations in the open countryside that we've given approval to. I think it's all very disappointing, and I hope in future the new council will look more carefully at proposals like this. But I can't see any justification for agreeing to the new entrance and exit road,
which is what we're asked to do today.
Which is exactly what we're asked to do, and I think. And if asked, I would propose that we refuse.
Well, are you putting that as a proposal?
I am.
Right. Well, that's clear cut. Does somebody else want to? Councillor Townsend, I heard your voice in the background without saying it.
Seconded.
Yes, indeed, you've seconded it. So we have a proposal, Leslie, to say no to this. Go to you.
Chairman, can I ask what's the reason?
Well, you can, and I'm sure Councillor Johns will give you a reason, if not more than one.
Well, I mean, the reasoning really is the reasoning where we gave on the original application, was that it was only deemed, and I can see Paul is shaking his head, but did we not only give it for temporary access for the construction of the building?
Well, let's get clarity from Paul on this one then, did we, at the time?
Sorry,
Paul?
sorry, I was trying to find my mute.
I said be clear whether it's temporary access we gave, yes. I wasn't on the committee either then, I don't know.
The access was always going to be there for a field access. So the access, this additional access was always going to be there, but also provided temporary access during the construction as well as. So there's always going to be that point of access. So what your concerns could only really be is that that access is now slightly wider to serve the development as well as the field access, and doesn't have that link through to the existing business park. And what are you saying is the harm is what I'd put back to you.
Councillor Johns, do you want to answer that?
Well, the harm is that concerns we have concerning road safety. I mean,
Jim Newton, are you saying that we're on sort of
sticky ground,
flimsy territory here on this one?
I'd say paper thin, councillors. There's no objection from the Highway Authority. They've got a fallback position where they can build a unit. So I can't see it, but it's not my decision. I just advise you that I wouldn't.
Well, in that fact, we know your advice, but we do have a proposal in front of us, which has been duly seconded. Councillor Surgeson-Brooke, do you want to say something before we vote?
Yes, very reluctantly, I'm actually going to have to agree with the officers, because there's no way that we would win an appeal. And I hate losing our council money on something that really hasn't got a hope in winning. So even though I think it's entirely wrong, I'm going to actually abstain.
All right, well, let's go to this vote. Let's deal with this vote. That might sort of enlighten where we've got to on this one. Leslie, do you want to just remind us what it is?
I think Councillor Holloway wanted to say something.
Oh, all right. Yeah, sorry, you're on the other screen.
Sorry, Councillor Bignell's got his hand up as well.
Yes,
Chairman.
well, everybody wants to speak now. Councillor Hollowell first.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure that this was something that we could easily have avoided. I don't think we need to do a lot of officer bashing here, because I can't think what officers actually did that was wrong. What should have happened here, when the previous owners or whatever, when this land was sold, then they should have offered an easement to it via the existing entrance. That's where it seems to me to have gone wrong. But I tend to come to the same opinion as Councillor Surgeson-Brooke, that as distasteful as this is, I don't think we would win an appeal on it, not without the backing of the Highway Authority. Thank you, Chair.
That's all right. Councillor Bignell.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I completely agree with Councillor Surgeson-Brooke that much as we don't like it, we have to go with it, and there's any reason to turn it down.
All right, but we do have this proposal, so we can. Oh, you want to say something, Councillor? What do you want to say, Councillor?
I think it is. I mean, at least I've made you discuss it all. I can see where we're coming from. We are where we are now. Don't think I'm going to support this thing, but I think we probably would be sensible not to go for the for the access point, because I don't think we would win it. But you better put it to the vote.
Well, I think that's what we should do. Then, as I say, we can get that out of the way. Yeah. We'll know where we are. Councillor Johns.
Yes, I mean, playing devil's advocate, I'm happy to refuse, but I shall vote against the substantive motion, because I don't think I agree with Councillor Surgeson-Brooke that we stand a cat in hell's chance of succeeding if it went to appeal. But
your own motion. Is that what you're saying?
I've withdrawn my own.
Have you withdrawn the motion?
I've withdrawn the motion.
All right, so we're all right. Fair enough. It's withdrawn. I think Councillor Townsend, you're probably on the verge of withdrawal anyway. Yes. All right. So let's forget that. Let's forget that whole motion that we had. We're not going to vote on that one now. We've now go back to the original recommendation, which is to grant permission subject to conditions. Who would care to propose that? Yeah, Councillor Bignell. Thank you. And who will second it? Councillor. Who have we got? Oh, I can't see anybody who wants to second it. We might have some.
Councillor Budden.
Councillor Button, thank you, Councillor Button. All right, so Leslie, over to you, please.
Okay, so we're go with the officer's recommendation now to approve this application. So it's Councillor Dallin.
4.
Councillor Pritchard.
4.
Councillor Bignell.
4.
Councillor Budden.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Cooper.
4.
Councillor Hollowell.
4.
Councillor Johns.
Against.
Councillor Sammy Otis.
Against.
Councillor Surgeson Brooke.
Abstain.
Councillor Townsend.
Against.
Councillor Wiltshire. Elaine Wiltshire.
4.
And Councillor Paul Wiltshire. Sorry, Councillor Paul Wiltshire.
Against.
It's split in the Wiltshire household. Right, I think the ayes have it, don't they, just?
Let me just count.
Yeah.
Yes, that was approved, Chairman.
So I've got the 4.
Yes, it's 4. Yes, very good.
Thank you, Matthew.
That's all right. Now, I'll ask the committee's opinion here. We've got 3 items to go. Do you wish to have a break for 10 minutes or so, or shall we press on? What's the view?
Like a break, please.
You'd like a break? All right, we'll have a break. It's now 4:25 just gone. Let's say we start again at 20 to 5, 4:40. So just pause for a second so that we can...
So, Mr. Woods, do you think you could pause the stream, please?
That's not a problem. That won't be an issue. I can't pause the webcast as such because it would take it offline, but I'll be displaying a message saying that this is the South Northamptonshire Council Planning Committee and that will be adjourned until 16:40. If I could ask you all to mute your microphones as well whilst you're on the break. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Chairman, we're back.
Excellent. Well, welcome back. If you've been watching us all afternoon on YouTube, I hope you've enjoyed yourselves. We've had quite a varied afternoon so far. There is much more to come, I anticipate, as we go to our next planning application, which is the one concerning outline planning permission for up to 54 dwellings in Middleton Cheney. And I'll call upon Claire Caldwell, who is the planning officer for this case officer, to describe it for us.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm just going to share my screen with you, so just bear with me a second. Hopefully you can now see the application site plan in front of you on the screen.
Yes.
Right, excellent. Right, so this is an application, an outline application for up to 54 homes in Middleton Cheney, and access is the only matter that is submitted for approval at this stage. All other matters are reserved. So you can see on the screen before you the site location plan outlined in red. The site lies on the eastern edge of Middleton Cheney. Just for some context, you can see the A422 at the bottom of your screens, which links Banbury and Brackley, and you can see the main road that runs through the village. And this site is located off Waters Lane, which exits the village northwards. So just to give you a little bit of context, this white dotted line here is the public right-of-way which is referenced in the reports, which is the subject of a proposed contribution to hard surface, a section between Waters Lane and the playing fields of Chenderritt School. The rest of it is already hard surfaced, and that links Waters Lane and High Street. Where the report refers to a recent development on the western side of the site, this is a David Wilson Homes development here, which dates from approximately about 7 or 8 years ago. So what I'm going to show you now is just a slightly closer aerial view of the application site, just so you can see which residential properties are most affected by this application. So you can see this is the David Wilson Homes development, which has properties which face out onto the site. You've got some properties here in Slade Lees and some properties here in Waters Lane, which present side and rear elevations to the application site. This is Themford Road, and there is a copse of trees in this part of the site. And there is another property on Themford Road which presents its side elevation to the application site. And finally, there is an isolated property here which also has a side elevation with windows which overlooks the application site. The other thing you can see on this plan quite clearly is this hedgerow, which runs across the middle of the site and effectively bisects it into 2 different halves. The next plan I wanted to show you is taken from the applicant's design and access statement. And it's just really to show you how the application site sits relative to the village. So again, you've got the application site in red. And these figures all represent various services. So for here, for example, you've got a play area off Centenary Road, you've got the village hall, and you've got the core of the village effectively, which is where some convenience store and the primary school and a pharmacy and another pub in this area here. And here on Themford Road, Main Road, sorry, you've got bus stops and another pub. And what this plan also shows is the linkages to those facilities. So this is the public right-of-way that we talked about, which goes right past the playing fields for Chenderritt Secondary School. And obviously this comes out right opposite the site and provides a link right up to the High Street and down. But the applicant is also proposing to connect into the footpath on Waters Lane, which then offers a couple of different alternative pedestrian routes into those village services. So that's just quite a helpful plan to orientate you and see how it relates. The next plan I wanted to show you is really just for the avoidance of any doubt, and this is referred to in the report. And this is the village confines plan, which is taken from the adopted Part 2 local plan. And you can see here that the black line, which is now the adopted line of the village confines, the application site clearly lies beyond those confines. So the next thing I wanted to do is to just take you through some photographs. This photograph is just showing you that public right of way. So this is looking down towards Waters Lane, and this is Chenderit Secondary School playing fields on your left, and there is a lockable gate into the school from here. So this is that public right of way that links Waters Lane and High Street. And this is it further down, again looking towards the Waters Lane end. These are the David Wilson Homes properties on its northern edge, which face onto that the line of that public footpath. This is taken from within the David Wilson Homes site, and this, where I'm pointing now, is the application site. And this is a view taken from the existing field access on Waters Lane into the site. This is Thenford Road. This is that copse I showed you on the aerial photo, which fronts onto Thenford Road, and one of the Thenford Road properties, and here, which face Thenford Road but present side and rear elevations to the site. And these properties are on Waters Lane. There's one here you can just see that presents a side elevation, and these properties present a rear elevation onto that application site. And this is just slightly further up, just to show you that this is that hedgerow that that we looked at a short time ago that bisects the two parts of the application site. So this is the southern part of the application site. And this is Waters Lane going north. So where you can see the national speed limit signs. Where you see those, that is roughly the level of the David Wilson Home northern extremity. So the David Wilson Home site is behind this hedge, and the application site is behind this hedge. And this is looking in the opposite direction down towards the village of Middleton Cheney. So this is roughly the edge of the David Wilson site, and the application site is behind this hedge here. This is looking down towards Slade Lees. David Wilson Home site, for context, is here. And again, this is just that view that we saw earlier, where you can see the properties that back on to the site, and you can see that front boundary with Waters Lane. Those are the David Wilson Homes sites that are immediately opposite the application site. And this is taken from within the site itself. So you can see again that hedgerow which bisects the two parts of the site, and you can see that David Wilson Homes development directly opposite. Finally, this is just to show you the Waters Lane frontage looking from the opposite direction. So this is looking with the village behind me, looking up Waters Lane, Slade Lees, the David Wilson Homes development, and this is the application site. And unfortunately, my photography, the access is just slightly off the photo further south. Okay, so when this application was originally submitted, it was for up to 60 homes with the parameters set in line with the plan that I'm showing you here. And the reason for showing you this is that I just wanted to show the amended plans to you so you could see what the difference was. But essentially at this time, when it was 60 homes, the brown is the developable areas, which will be not only the homes, but also the roads and the private drives. That was set quite far north within the application site, as you can see here. And we raised some concerns about that, given the David Wilson Homes development here. And so the applicants went away and they reduced their scheme to 54 homes and changed those parameters. So what we have now in front of us for 54 is the brown, which is still the developable area, has been much reduced, as you can see in this northern area, so that it corresponds with the David Wilson Homes northern limit. And the area then of what would be public open space is quite significantly increased. I would say it is covered in the reports, but the open space is over a hectare's worth of open space, 1.17 hectares, and only 0.2 hectares is required under policy. So it is a significant over provision. And it is accessible not just from the development site, but also from elsewhere in the village, because you do have this public footpath connection, which would continue with pedestrian links into that open space. And that open space is not currently available. It is a private piece of land at the moment. What we also secured as part of this were some increased buffers around the site perimeters. This area would be where the surface water attenuation would be, but you have got quite significant buffers, and you've got the retention of that copse on Thenford Road, and we've also introduced buffers on this western side along Waters Lane. Now, this area here at the bottom of the plan, the green area is a parcel of land that the applicants are willing to offer to the residents of these properties that abut the site, should they wish to take it up, to extend their gardens, reinforced by a landscape buffer, which is the dark green strip. And the yellow part of the plan there is just showing you where the access point is. What we've also done is shown the retention of that native hedgerow throughout the middle of the site. There will be need for some removals to connect the two parts together, but largely that would be retained. So if you sort of just have a flick between the two, I think you can see that that is quite a difference between what was originally submitted. Now, I will show you the concept plan, although I would preface this by saying that it is an outline application, so the layout is not submitted for approval now, but it does give you an indication of how 54 homes could be accommodated within the site. And what you can see here, the white dots are showing you footpath pedestrian linkages. So you can see that connection from the public footpath, and you can see that they follow all the way through that quite big piece of open space and through the buffers, through the site and back out onto Waters Lane. So in terms of connectivity and health and well-being, actually that's something I think to be welcomed. In addition to that, you can see here that the buffers are to all of the residential properties that surround it, around all of the site edges. And we would expect the properties to be outward facing onto Waters Lane, onto the public open space and onto that countryside edge. And the densities are higher towards the centre of the southern part of the site, which is closest to the village, but lowering as you go to the north and around the site edges, those countryside edges as well. The site access plan, which I will show you, is just showing you a straightforward access to accord with the County Council specifications, which are 5.5 metre carriageway with 2 metre footways. But this just shows you that that footway would carry around and connect into the existing footway, which goes down onto Main Road. And there would be a crossing and a new stretch of footway, again, to connect into the footway on the opposite side of the road. And this little purple sliver is an area where the local highway authority requested that Waters Lane be widened within the vicinity of the access. So that's all been done at the County Council's request, and the County Council have confirmed that they are now happy with the access arrangements. Finally, I'll just show you the proposed relocation of the speed limit, which is something else the applicants are proposing. So this is the current position, and you'll remember we saw that in the photographs that we looked at, and the proposal is to relocate that speed limit further north, right to the edge of the application site. In terms of updates, the updates are reported for you. There's obviously some additional representations and objections received from residents of Middleton Cheney and neighbours, and from the parish council, and some additional comments just updating the amounts of financial contributions payable by NCC in light of the reduction from 60 to 54 homes. The application is recommended for approval, but I just wanted to be clear, as many neighbours and the parish council have commented, the site is outside the adopted village confines and in open countryside, so it does conflict with an up-to-date development plan. And that development plan is, of course, the starting point for decision taking. But that doesn't mean that we cannot approve applications which conflict with the plan if the committee consider that there are material planning considerations that outweigh it. Now, officers have gone through each of what they consider to be those material planning considerations in the report and applied weight to them that they consider to be appropriate. So I don't propose to repeat all of those material planning considerations here, because they are detailed in your report, but they do focus on in addition to the need to boost the housing land supply, they do focus on the site's characteristics and its location on the edge of a primary service village and its linkages with the village centre, as well as the benefits of the proposal, like the additional open space and the contributions to local infrastructure. So, like I say, I don't propose to repeat those here. Suffice to say that the report recognises in it that the application is a finely balanced one, given the development plan situation. But in this case, your officers, having carried out that balancing exercise, are of the view that the balance weighs in favour of granting planning permission, and the Section 106 heads of terms and the conditions that would be recommended are all set out in the report that's before you. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. So if you could just exclude that screen now, then everybody can see. Yes, Councillor Bignell, as we go into questions. Councillor Bignell first.
Yeah, I've got two questions for the case officer. I understand it's in flood zone 1, this. Is it all the site in flood zone 1? You didn't allude to that when you were showing where the flood zone was on your map.
Let me just find that section of the report for you, Councillor. I think there is a small section that isn't, so just bear with me a second. So I'm looking in the report that the site lies within a flood zone 1, which is at low risk of flooding. No, there's no no flood risk been identified as part of the planning application and the consultations that have been carried out that I'm aware of. Was there a particular concern about flooding?
Well, it's constraint says the site is within flood zone 1, so is it a constraint? Isn't it a constraint?
Well,
you put it down as a constraint.
Flood zone 1 wouldn't normally be a constraint. No, flood zone 1 would be where
you put it in as a constraint in your report.
Yeah, well, it is a constraint in that it's a classification that exists. It doesn't prevent development.
Councillor Bignell, can I help? Can I jump in? There's 3 flood zones, generally speaking.
1, 2 and 3.
1, 2 and 3.
Yeah, I know that.
3 being functional floodplain, 2 being medium risk, and 1 being lowest risk. There is no flood zone 0, so flood zone 1 is the lowest risk.
So everything's in flood zone 1 if it's not in the others, then? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
All right, then the second question, you talked about granting some garden spaces, some adjoining properties. I mean, that's all very well if everybody takes it up, but if only 2 of those, I don't know, 4 or 5 properties are down, it looks a right mishmash. So what's going to happen if they don't all take up the extension of the gardens?
Yeah, I think that's a fair point. I mean, the piece of land would be offered to those residents that back onto it. Obviously, they're not obliged to accept it, and we'd obviously have to secure how that would be done through a Section 106. And because it's an outline, they'd have to submit reserved matters approval as well. So if that option wasn't taken up, then obviously we'd need to look at some way of appropriately landscaping the areas of land that weren't taken up. But yes, you're right. Not everybody might want to accept it.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Councillor Johns.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, a question of the officer. I was interested in 7.5 of the report from NCC regarding education services, saying there was a lack of capacity at early years, primary and secondary, but the resolution to it was sums of money. But do we know whether there is space to build additional classrooms? Is this money for extra teachers? I mean, it's quite a complicated subject in increasing capacity at schools, because there's a formula that fixes the size of classroom. I just wondered whether there was any additional information to justify whether a sum of money is going to make any difference. If there's a lack of capacity, i.e. there's nothing for early years, how is it going to be resolved by the County Council with 238,000? Similarly with Middleton Cheney School, if it's 99% up to capacity, I mean, what's this money for? Additional teachers, additional classrooms, both?
Okay, so have you got an answer to that one, Claire?
Yes, well, only to say that I am obviously bound by the advice of the County Council, but it is a question that has certainly been asked of the County Council, not least by the applicants. But the advice that we've got from them is that no, they haven't done a feasibility study of what may or may not be able to be provided at the primary school in Middleton Cheney, but bearing in mind obviously that not all parents might send their children to Middleton Cheney Primary School. So the suggestion is obviously that the financial contribution would be put to improving primary education in the area, but they haven't provided any details about what that would consist of, no.
Okay, well, that's an answer. And the County Council perhaps should be asked again. Let's go to Councillor Surgeon-Brooke.
Mr. Chairman, this is only an outline planning permission. So what is there to stop the speculator selling it to a developer who then comes back for all the extra houses?
Claire?
Well, yes, the application is outline and the applicant is a site promoter. So they would be, if they got planning permission, looking to sell the land on to a housing developer. But the planning permission, if granted, would be for up to 54 homes. And one of the recommended conditions is to condition compliance with that parameter plan that I showed you, so that the developable areas would be the developable areas. So it would be controlled through the permission itself and the conditions that would be attached if planning permission were granted.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Barrett, if you could just mute yourself. I think you're on. Looks to me like you're. Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Hollowell, call to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got 5 questions, Chairman. I'll read them all out.
Well, can we go one and get an answer to each as we go? Otherwise, we'll forget what they are.
Okay, all right, okay. Well, the first one's an easy one. The public right-of-way, AU15, does it require public lighting on it?
Right.
No, there is no request for public lighting along that footpath.
Well, I didn't ask if there had been a request. Do we think it needs, if this is going to be a route to school in the dark, in the winter nights, does it need public lighting on it?
Right, well, there's a couple of issues about the public right of way, and that is that the proposal is for a financial contribution to surface that public right of way. It's not for the developer to deliver any of those works, because the land where the footpath runs is not in the control or ownership of the applicant. Part of it is County Council land at the back of Chenderritt School, and part of it is owned by David Wilson Homes. So the proposal at the moment is simply for the transfer of a financial contribution to try and secure the hard surfacing of the existing unsurfaced route. It wouldn't cover additional street lighting.
Next question is look at 9.114 on page 127, utilities. Who is going to pay for the upgrades?
Sorry, Councillor, which was the paragraph number again?
Yeah, it's 9.10, sorry, 9.114 on page 127.
Yeah. Well, the developer would need to pay for the utility upgrades.
Thanks. And then 9.120 on page 127. You were talking there about providing electrical charging points, but in condition 27 on page 139, you're only requiring ducting. What's it to be?
Yes, that's right. That's my mistake, Councillor. It would be the ducting that would be provided by the developer so that the homeowners would have an option or not to install charging points in the future.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure if there's a correction in updates, but in the recommendation 2E on page 130, should that not be 27,454, not 30,504.28?
Sorry, where am I looking?
Recommendations on page 130, number 2, part E.
Part E is the contribution towards early years services. Is that the one that you were talking about?
I'm looking at, I'll just double check just a second.
Yes, because that says about 238,000, that one.
Yes, for early years services. I mean, there is an update, a written update, but the contribution that the County Council are asking for now towards early years based on 54 houses is in the region of £214,488.
Okie dokie, that answers that question. Thanks very much. And the last question is condition 18 on pages 136 to 7. Who is to take the responsibility for lighting, public lighting?
Well, it depends where the public lighting is. If the lighting is within adoptable highway, then it would be the adopting authority. If it was in public open space, then it would be whoever was responsible for maintaining the open space. Or possibly the parish council. I don't know the situation in Middleton Cheney, whether it's the highway authority or the parish council.
Okay, well, that's sort of an open answer there, I think. And is that it, Councillor Harwell?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman.
Yeah, very good. I sense Councillor Townsend was raising his hand slightly. I don't know whether you want to say something, ask a question.
I'm waiting, my father is waiting to come.
You're poised. You're poised for action in due course. All right. Well, that's glad to hear that. Poised, yes. Now, has anybody else got a question at this point? Let me get that. Oh, Councillor Pritchard has. Yeah. Go on.
Officer, thank you, Chairman. Officer, one of the things actually that perhaps excuse my ignorance, but when you were actually outlining the situation with regards to outline planning permission, and this organisation, once it gets approval for an outline planning permission, did I get the impression that they can then sell it on to a developer? And what flexibility does a developer have then, you know, bearing in mind the outline and where the house is and where the roads are at the moment on as an outline that's been approved? How can should we say, the developer itself, how can he alter that around without coming back to the authority?
Right, so yeah, just to clarify, yes, the application is outline and the applicants are a site promoter. So if they are successful in securing that outline consent, they would sell the land on to a housing developer, a builder of houses. And yes, that is controlled by however we choose to restrict the outline consent, which what I'm suggesting in this case would be, obviously the description of development would be up to 54, so there could be no more than 54, and I am proposing that we condition it to comply with that parameters plan I showed you to make sure that that area of open space is provided and the developable area follows the same line as the development opposite. The layout plan that I showed showed you is just really for illustrative purposes to show how you could fit 54 houses on there, but we wouldn't be approving that layout plan. They'd need to come in with another application for reserve matters, which complied with the parameters, but maybe a different layout than that one that I showed you.
So in fact, you can say that when and if the application comes in for approval, it could be totally different to what actually has been described in the original application.
Well, the numbers and the location of the access would be fixed, and that parameter plan would be fixed. So anywhere within that brown area that I showed you, we would have to agree the layout through a later application.
And the new developer would actually have to abide by 50% affordable homes.
So the 50% affordable homes, if permission was granted, would be secured through a Section 106, which would be part and parcel of the planning permission. Yes.
But if the developer come back and then, you know, through, should we say, as happened in the past, when you look at whether in fact it's a viable proposition for the developer to build, can come back and say, no, I can't do 50%, I can only do 30% affordable homes. With the outline planning permission, can we actually insist that it is 50%?
Well, the Section 106 would require 50%, but would they be able to come back at a later date if there was a viability issue? Then I've not had any indication that that would be the case, but obviously I can't foresee the future.
No. Okay, thank you for that.
Would that we could in this context and many others as well. All right, well, looking to see no other questions, we can obviously, you can make more comments in the mounting debate. We have got two public speakers for this, and the first one has submitted, who is an objector, submitted a statement which I will now read. This is from Stephen Buckley. Hello, my name is Stephen Buckley and I've lived in Middleton Cheney for most of my life. I met my wife here, who was born in Middleton Cheney, and we got married in All Saints Church 28 years ago. Our family have grown up in this wonderful village. However, all our friends and family are extremely worried that Middleton Cheney is turning into an urban town. And we are even more concerned that housing developments are being considered on farmland and green fields. I have therefore written a formal objection to the proposed development on Waters Lane, and 17 other neighbours and residents have also written letters of objection, including the parish council. My objection is based on several reasons described in a 28-page document on the SNC planning website that can be summarised as follows. Middleton Cheney has simply become too large for the inherent village infrastructure. Since the last census in 2011, the number of dwellings has increased from 1,499 by at least 185, which represents an increase of over 12%. Traffic and parking are atrocious, the schools are over capacity, and we no longer have a doctor's surgery. The application for an additional 54 houses at Waters Lane would make matters worse, and anyway is outside the confines of the village boundaries. Specific matters are based on valid objections to the following. 1, the intensity and appearance of proposed development. 2, highways matters and road safety, where the single track section of Waters Lane to the north would be used as a rat run, leading to the notoriously dangerous Welsh Lane. 3, protection of the countryside, safeguarding nature and wildlife habitat. 4, control of pollution and noise. 5, loss of amenity and the detrimental effect on the character of our lovely village and Waters Lane. We strongly urge you to reject this planning application. And that is Mr. Stephen Buckley, who's a local resident. If we may now turn to the applicant, and Leslie, you have a recording for us. This is Ed Barrett of Catesby Estates.
My name is Ed Barrett and I'm the planning manager at Catesby Estates, the applicant. The application before you is recommended for approval on the basis of the significant range of benefits which will be delivered. The most important of these is the provision of up to 27 new affordable homes, representing half of the development, which will help to meet the significant demand on the current housing register. House prices in Middleton Cheney are currently around 60% higher than the regional average, and your officers correctly recognise that the affordable housing provision weighs heavily in favour of the proposals. To encourage walking and cycling, the proposals will deliver the widening and hard surfacing of the existing footpath linking Waters Lane to the secondary school and High Street at a cost of £66,000. This improvement will also benefit existing residents and school children. To further promote sustainable modes of transport, cycle route signage is to be provided, as well as a pair of new wooden bus shelters. In response to the comments raised at our public consultation event, the gardens of the properties adjoining the southern boundary of the site are to be increased in size. Importantly, the Highway Authority have confirmed that proposals will provide a safe and suitable means of access and will not result in any significant impacts on the highway network or highway safety. The access arrangements have been subject to an independent road safety audit, verifying that they constitute a safe and suitable proposal. Middleton Cheney is the district's most sustainable village, and your officers consider that proposals represent an appropriate scale of development. The Reports Committee also confirms that the application site is not of significance to the form or character of the village, is well contained and well related to the village and its facilities. The increased choice of new homes, including bungalows, will allow growing families and first-time buyers to remain within the village, as well as enabling older residents to downsize, freeing up larger homes. The size of the site will mean it will have interest from local and regional house builders, and its development will assist in bolstering the district's housing supply and delivery record, as it will be completed well within 5 years. In summary, no objections have been received from any statutory consultees. Section 106 and community infrastructure levy payments will ensure that local infrastructure is enhanced to cater for new residents. The site is logical, and the proposals before you will set the parameters for a high quality, sensitive scheme reflective of the character of the village. The benefits of the proposal are considerable, and I ask you to follow your officer's recommendation and vote in favour of this application. Thank you.
And that was Ed Barrett, who's from Catesby Estates, the applicant. All right, well, you've heard those two views. I will now go to a discussion. And since Councillor Townsend was champing at the bit to say something, I'll call upon him first. We don't have ward members here, so go to him first.
Well, I wasn't ready for that one, but yeah, it's not actually the plan. What the development looks pretty good, I think, and actually, of course, we had glimpses of the development from Barrett from across the road, you see how well a lot of our housing is turning out, which is making them extremely desirable and very popular. And I've got two problems with this. The first is we must be as a council, we seem to be about taking it at record level of busting our local plan. We only approved last month, this doesn't appear in the local plan. So that is my first concern, and I think needs answering, and because I think that will create a precedent. Every other developer must be looking at this and saying, well, how is it that the Catesby Homes have managed to get planning permission in Middleton? What about Bugbrook? What about Deansacre? What about this? And I think they'll all be sharpening their pencils and looking out for possible new sites. And it would be difficult, actually, if we said, well, it was different in Middleton. I'm not saying how different it would be. That would be my first thing. But the second point, I think all this is about numbers and our 5-year land supply. And we are rightly concerned, and we get these figures from the government. And what have we done? We've over-delivered by something like 1,400 houses in the last years, which is questionable whether we are able to defend that as appeal, as giving a reason why things shouldn't be as they are. And why has this happened is because we are so popular and people want to live in this area. With 1,400, that means that we have actually delivered a village the size of Middleton Cheney in our district. And that must have an effect on our schools and hospitals and all the services we offer. There is, how are we reckoning on that? We're supposed to be future planning And if there is a danger that we are going to go below our 5-year land supply, then I would suggest that we would have to go back to the what was a very successfully, what we did very successfully was the interim housing policy, which we produced, where we produced 1,000 houses really quite quickly as we needed to do so. But that was a policy. And if there is a problem, then surely we should be thinking of putting something into our local plan which says if we go below, then this is what we will do. Because at the moment, it doesn't seem to be that there's very much control over what houses we deliver, where and when. So I'm not necessarily against this application, but I do think there's an awful lot of answers that are required before we give permission.
Well, thank you very much. You raise a general point, which I think I'm going to call on Jim Newton as the Assistant Director of Planning and Economy to comment on this, busting the local plan within a few days of agreeing to it, and whether, you know, well, we don't talk about setting precedents because we consider each application on its merit, but nevertheless, it is a point that has been raised. Jim Newton?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think the first point I'd make about the local plan is that it's not a realistic proposal to say that a local plan is perfect and that it considers every potential site that's going to come forward during the life of the plan. If that was the case, then we wouldn't need criteria-based policies to deal with the sites that that are outside of the plan. Now, ultimately, we drew the village boundaries, the village confines, on the basis that the rural part of our housing requirement has been met, but that doesn't mean that we have a moratorium on sites, on new housing sites. It just means that as we've met our requirement for those sites and we can demonstrate a 5-year supply, then we have the option to say no to the sites that are not sustainable. In my judgment, this site, it's got village confines boundary on two of its sides. Is really well located to the existing settlement. You've seen the photos, you've seen all of the plans that demonstrate how it fits in. It's got the landscape buffer all around the edge, which would make it very, very difficult to then leapfrog over that site and start developing into the next field. So in my judgment, I don't think it's breaking the local plan. I think it's applying the policies of the local plan in a sensible way to make sure that we maintain our 5-year supply and that we choose the good sites, because an up-to-date adopted local plan hasn't meant that all of the planning applications in the villages have gone away. They're still there. They're still coming forward. What we've got now is we've got ourselves into a position where we can pick and choose the good sites and we can reject the poor sites.
Just a general point, some people watching us may say, well, what is the point of village confines? Not specific to any application, but is there a general answer to that you can give?
Well, within the village confines, that's where we would say is the first choice for new development to be located. But it doesn't stop there. And the policy says that if you're immediately adjacent to, then as long as you can demonstrate that it's a good site, then it's not an automatic no. So it's not a case of black and white, unfortunately, even though the map's drawn in black and white and here's a black line. It doesn't work like that in practice.
All right, well, thank you for that answer. Councillor Bignell. We can't hear you at the moment.
Oh, wait a minute, I'll turn myself on. Yeah, a few points to make, Chairman. I did wax lyrical a couple of weeks ago about the local plan, and it goes against the grain that I suddenly just rip it up and throw it away. I accept what Jim says. But what really annoys me is the local parish council, the people that actually live there, don't like the idea of it. And we're just ignoring that. And that's a big thing, you know. The locals know what's going on with the schools and everything. And I know there's a NIMBY attitude that they don't want things built in villages, and we're all a bit like that, but we're just disregarding any view at all from them. And Jim's saying, oh, it's a good site because it two sides of it are actually touch the existing village boundary. Well, take Rotherthorpe, that attached on two sides, but we rejected that and we fought like hell about it. And that was I mean, if you remember Rotherthorpe, it was on a crossroads. Three sides of the crossroads are developed, the other isn't. And that's an ideal site to develop. We fought tooth and nail to defend that, so it wasn't gone. So that argument's out the window. It's, you know, you can't say because it's on two sides, oh, we'll put up with it. And I feel sorry for them because they are a primary service village, and Bugbrook's one as well. And they've taken 12% over the last 10 years. They have been rammed like Bugbrook's been rammed. And, you know, enough is enough. And we should listen to what they have to say about it. So, and we do have a 5-year land supply. It may be tenuous, it may be up for the thing, but we do have one. We have a local plan. The village boundaries of Middleton Cheney weren't redrawn in that village plan. It sits there. And I can't possibly vote for this having promoted the local plan. Thank you, Chair.
All right, well, we have two people wanting to speak. I'll go first to Councillor Harwell.
Thank you, Chairman. I've tried to approach this from a policy point of view. And if you start with the NPPF 12 and 40, sections 12 and 47, which are kind of two sides of the same coin, they make it quite clear. Just a short extract from NPPF 12, local planning authorities may take decisions that depart from an up-to-date development plan, but only if material considerations in a particular case indicate that the plan should not be followed. What are the material considerations? Well, the officer has kindly listed these on pages 109 to 110 and has offered a weighting for each one or for each group. I've asked myself 3 questions. First of all, is that list complete? And secondly, do we agree with the weighting on it? And overall, are the material considerations sufficient to set aside the development plan? As Councillor Bignell just said, Middleton Cheney is a second category primary source village. In the last 10 years, it's suffered a 12% increase in housing. It's absolutely been hammered. And you can, I think, be forgiven for thinking that, you know, the people there locally have had enough, that they don't want any more, certainly in the foreseeable future. I accept entirely what Jim Newton says. We do need good sites, and although we've got our 5-year supply, we could do with more. We could do with more affordable housing across the district, but we have more than met our overall housing needs. It's really this question of the development that has already taken place that I think is a material consideration in itself, and I tend to think that pushes it over the edge, and I don't think we have enough strength in the material considerations to warrant setting the development plan, which, as Councillor Bignell said, we only agreed the other week. I don't think we can set that aside. The other point, the last point I want to make is to do with condition 22 on page 138 regarding the highway, which kind of makes an assumption that the highways wouldn't be adopted. Well, we certainly don't want private estates in South Northamptonshire. We never have done, and I see no reason for doing that now. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you very much. Councillor Johns.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I mean, picking up on what earlier speakers have said, I think I accept a lot of what Mr. Newton says, and a lot of what he says does make good sense. But and again, you know, if this development were built as presented to us today, I think it would have a lot of merit in it. You know, in terms of the layout, its proximity to the rest of the village, the buffer with outside the village, the additional open areas, and so forth. I think it would be very good. But the difficulty I've got is, one is it is within weeks of us adopting the local plan. But more than that, it is the sustainability of Middleton Cheney. I mean, thanks to recent by-elections, I'm very familiar with Middleton Cheney. Tramped around it many a time, and I'm well aware of that village. And it does concern me, particularly when you look at the report from NCC and education. It's all well and good NCC asking for cash contributions, But is that going to make any difference to primary education in Middleton Cheney? Is it going to provide early years services? Is it going to help with secondary education? Almost certainly not. And we already know as a village it's lost its local surgery, and these pressures are real. So I think had this been part of the local plan, had been thought through, given an opportunity for local people to consider it in a longer term, it would have much more merit. But to come literally almost days after us agreeing the local plan, which we've all sort of drawn teeth in trying to get through, doesn't seem right, and it does smack of just a speculative application, which it is, of course, because it's just an opportunity to now try to attract a developer, and goodness knows what comes up with then. The other point is, although in the order of things it's more minor, it makes various suggestions about this footpath link, but it's talking about land that it doesn't own. And it may all be well and good for them to want to surface and even put lighting in, but are the occupants of the David Wilson properties going to warm to the idea of lighting outside their homes? It's all been done almost to tick every box our officers have asked for, in the hope of getting something through. But unfortunately for me, it doesn't make the mark, and I can't support the application.
Thank you very much. Councillor Surgeson Brooke.
Mr. Chairman, I was absolutely amazed when I read this report that it was being recommended for approval. We just don't do that unless we have a dire need. We have got enough houses. The parish council doesn't want it. It's not going to be an exchange for something that they wouldn't get unless it happened. And you could say it's premature. We may need it in the future, and we could tell them to come back then, but we don't need it now. It just means that we're going to use up far more houses than we need. So I certainly can't support it.
Thank you very much. Anyone else like to share their thoughts on this one? I look around, I can't see anybody. Councillor Pritchard, you normally got a view on things.
Councillor Breeze has got a hand up.
I do apologise. Yes, well,
Yeah.
Councillor Pritchard can have a think whilst I go to Councillor Breeze.
Thank you, Chairman. I won't be voting on this one because I have been on another meeting and have come in, but I'm the county councillor for Middleton Cheney, and actually I know the village exceedingly well, and over the years they have been pummeled by application after application that's outside the village confines in which have got permission, and which have expanded as I've heard and heard repeated, has expanded the village beyond recognition. It's got new extensions popping up everywhere, and it will continue to be under intense pressure because of its location. But the services are not kept up to match, and I think it would be doing a disservice to Middleton Cheney if this is another 54 houses without the secondary school and the other education and other services in place to support it. It's really supporting Banbury and what goes on over the border, and inflicting pain on our communities to support people who work over there. So if I was voting, I know which way I'd vote, but I'm not going to. But it will be an added imposition on a village that's taken a lot over the last 10 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Pritchard.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As I mentioned earlier on, when I look at the plans, and obviously I'm looking at some information that actually the speculator, if I can call them that, sent through, I thought the plan...
Well, call it the applicant, if you would, please.
The applicant then, okay. But it's one of these things where the design and everything I think would be very acceptable, and if it was in the village confines, we would have no issues whatsoever. But the concern I have is that once outline planning permission has been given, and I can appreciate, with 106 and the conditions that can be put onto it, it could bear no resemblance whatsoever with regards to the original outline application. I'm still considering how I would actually vote on this one, but it does concern me that there can be a situation where somebody can put forward outline plans in a very well marketed proposal, and then actually have no responsibility for actually doing the implementation of it. Back to you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Townsend, you were just waving your hand slightly. Go ahead.
Sorry, I was relaxing, having said what I did. I mean, if I've got the floor, I just would say I would do so agree. I think this application is just premature. It may well be needed in the future, but it isn't needed now.
Well, with the looking around, nobody else got a view. Do we have anybody who'd like to put forward a proposal? Now, we do have in front of us, as you know, recommendation to grant permission subject to those conditions and 106 legal room. Councillor Hollowell.
I'm ready to make a resolution, I think, Chairman, if you're accepting.
Yes, I think we're at that stage, yeah.
I think the wording would be along the lines of, in light of MPPF 12 and 47, West Northants Joint Course Strategy Policy R1 Part G, and South Northamptonshire Local Plan Policy LH1 Part 2, that this application should be refused.
Thank you. Do I see a seconder for that, please? Councillor Paul Wiltshire, I saw your hand first. All right, so Leslie Farrell, we have a formal proposal there. Can I go to you, please?
Oops. Yes, thank you, Chairman. So this is for going against the officer recommendation for refusal of this application. So I'll start with you if I can, Councillor Dallin.
Yeah, I'm for the refusal.
Councillor Pritchard.
I will abstain.
Councillor Bignall.
For refusal.
Councillor Budden. We got Councillor Budden?
I can't see him.
Disappeared. Councillor Clark. I can't see Councillor Clark either. Councillor Cooper.
For the refusal.
Councillor Hollowell.
For.
Councillor Johns.
For.
Councillor Surgeson Brooke.
For.
Councillor Townsend.
For.
Councillor Elaine Wiltshire.
refusal.
And Councillor Paul Wiltshire.
For refusal.
Thank you. So let's refuse that application then, Chairman.
Yeah, and just to be clear for anybody who may say, well, councillors are not here, that we are more than quorate in taking that vote, are we not?
We are, yes.
Indeed. Right. Okay. So that has been refused. Claire Caldwell's going to stay in position because she's got something else to tell us. This is another application for Middleton Cheney. So if you take the floor again, please.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Yes, we're back in Middleton Cheney. I'm just going to share my screen with you. This time we're looking at an application for full planning permission, so not an outline, for 20 homes. The application site is outlined in red. Just to give you some context again, this is the site that we have just been talking about at Waters Lane, and this is the application site which is accessed from Thenford Road. So what I just draw your attention to on this plan is this green dotted line here. The green dotted lines are public rights of way, particularly this one because we'll see some photographs taken from that public right of way shortly. And I'd also draw your attention to the properties again that are most affected by this application, and they are those on Thenford Road which face out onto the site. A collection of properties here, some of which present sides, but a lot of them present rear elevations to this site. And some properties on Main Road that again present side and rear elevations to that site. So, oh, there we go. So this is the aerial, which is again just a bit of a larger scale for you to have a look at the context. Again, that's the Waters Lane site that we're just talking about. And here you can see those properties a bit more clearly. That is, you can just make out the line there, which is the public footpath that I pointed out a minute ago, where some of the photographs are taken from. Okay, so just to be quite clear again, just to put you in perspective, I know you've talked about Waters Lane. This is the same plan, so apologies if it's taken from the other application, but just to show you how this application site sits in relation to the village centre. So you can see perhaps doesn't have the same footpath link as Waters Lane, but the applicant is proposing a footpath link from the access to connect into an existing footpath up Themford Road, which would then lead into public rights of way and footpaths that would lead into the village centre. So you can see how connected that site is as well. And this is a similar situation to the application we've just discussed, in that this application site also lies outside the adopted village confines, which are shown on the plan that is in front of you now. A difference in this case is that this site also falls within land designated as a special landscape area in the adopted Part 2 plan, which is the area of land shown in green on this plan. So we'll just take a look at some photographs. This first one is taken from Themford Road, looking back towards the village. So the application site is this field here behind this hedge. These are the properties on Themford Road which face onto it. This is an existing field access, so there would be another access created to this site just further up. And these are the houses that, these ones particularly you can see present side elevations onto the site. These ones also present rear elevations, which we'll see in a minute. And this is the other direction. So the application site sits on land behind this hedge. The next photograph, this is really just to show you, it's not the best photograph, but it's just to show you that there is a difference in ground levels between Themford Road and the application site. And this is a view into the site from Themford Road. The diggers are archaeological trial trenches which were being carried out when I did the site visit, so that's what they are. But you can see from this aspect that the land rises in this direction. And the next set of photographs I'm going to show you are all taken from that public right of way, which I pointed out. So these are the houses on Themford Road, which back onto the site, that's their garden boundary, that hedgerow. And this is all the application site where that digger is doing those trenches. This is the back garden of a house onto Main Street. So it's all of that area. And these, like I say, these are all taken from the public footpath. So it's here and here. Okay, so this is another application that has been amended since its original submission. So when it was originally submitted, it was for 23 homes actually, which is this layout, and we did have some concerns about some of the house types and the gable spans and proportions, and particularly this sensitive countryside edge, which you just saw a short minute ago from the public right of way, is very visible. So we did have some concerns about houses backing onto that and the extent of hard surfacing in this area. So the applicants have been engaging with officers for quite some time and have willingly changed the site layout to respond to those concerns. And this is the latest layout that we're determining today. So this now is for 20 houses, reduced from 23. And as you can see, the houses are arranged along a single access road from Themford Road. We've resolved the issues at the bottom of the site. We just have a small bungalow now presenting a side elevation. A lot of that hard surfacing has gone. So we've actually got a nice landscaped public open space buffer to that countryside edge now, and the retention of mature trees. And we've resolved the house type issues as well. So I think if I just, like I say, if I just flick between those two, I think you can see that actually the amended layout for 20, it is much improved from the original layout. All those houses face outwards. Again, we've got a frontage to Thenford Road, and we've got a frontage out towards the open countryside. Even this building, which is flats, would be double fronted facing outwards as well. So we are happy and content that that layout is an appropriate and acceptable layout now. It is accompanied with quite a detailed landscape strategy given its position in a special landscape area. So this is just to show that the boundaries will be retained and enhanced with shrub and tree planting, and we have this landscaped area of open space and wildflower planting as well, which all adds to the net biodiversity gain. In terms of site access, the site access is a single access onto Thenford Road. The Highway Authority have no objections to the principle of 20 homes being accessed in this manner from Thenford Road, and the applicants do propose to continue a footway to join in with where the existing footway is on Thenford Road. So there's a continuous footpath into the village. The house types also have been amended since they were originally submitted, so don't panic, this is one of the superseded house types. So we did go back and ask the applicant to amend the house type so they accorded with our village design guide, which they did. You'll see these ones I'm showing you now, the originals. So they did have some front facing gables and quite a few dormers, missing chimneys, large windows, wide gable spans. And we did go back, ask the applicant to make some changes, which again they willingly did, and we now have properties that have steep pitches with narrow gable spans. They all have chimneys, they have smaller windows and appropriate detailing and some variety in those window styles and designs. So I hope you agree that they are a significant improvement over what was originally submitted. And again, officers are content that those house types now comply with the design guide and are acceptable. The application on this occasion is recommended for refusal. And you'll see that we have carried out the same exercise with this application as we did with the previous one that you were looking at, in that the development plan was our starting point, and then we looked at whether there were material planning considerations that outweighed that development plan conflict. So we have gone through the same process again with this, and that's all detailed in the report again, so I don't propose to reiterate that. The difference in this case, and I should say that, you know, it does have merit, it does have many of the same material planning considerations in its favour as the previous application, but it does have an issue in this case with landscape and visual impact, particularly given its siting in the special landscape area, and that is more fragile and sensitive to change. So because it was in the landscape area, we did appoint an external consultant to review the applicant's LVIA, and he is of the view that that does underestimate the effect of the development, and he feels that the adverse effects are significant in planning terms, and obviously we do have to give that due weight. So that carries significant weight against the application. So in conclusion, again, the application is a finely balanced one, but in this case, particularly given those landscape and visual impacts, officers consider in this case that the balance weighs against granting planning permission. I did want to update you in respect of the Highway Authority. You'll see reference to this in your written updates, but the Highway Authority still have some concerns about the internal layout, not the principal access onto Thenford Road and whether that is suitable, but just some of the detailed aspects, particularly in this area here with this bend and forward visibility. And they have advised, the applicant has tried to resolve these and does believe they are resolvable, but to date hasn't been able to do that. So the Highway Authority feel that that is an unacceptable impact in highway safety terms and would like the application also to be refused on that basis. So there is an additional recommended reason for refusal, which I'm going to read out to you because it's not in the updates. And that is as follows. The proposed internal site layout proposes an acute bend in the carriageway by plot 8. This would force drivers onto the opposite side of the carriageway into the path of an oncoming opposing vehicle, the impact of which would be exacerbated by the lack of forward visibility in this part of the site. This bend, together with the absence of a 25-metre forward visibility splay, leads to reduced visibility and hazards for road users, which would lead to an unacceptable impact on highway safety. This would conflict with paragraph 109 of the NPPF and policies C2 of the West Northants Joint Core Strategy and SS2 of the South Northamptonshire Local Plan Part 2. Thank you, Chairman.
Yes, thank you very much indeed. Okay, if you lose your screen there, as you have, any questions you'd like to put to the officer on this? Don't think, is there anybody actually asking a question? This point? No, I can't see anybody. Right, let's turn then to, we have a public speaker, we have the agent, Jeff Armstrong. So Leslie, if you'd like to play that recording for us, please.
Thank you to the chair and members of the committee for allowing me to speak. My name is Jeff Armstrong and I am the agent on behalf of Manor Oak Homes for application at land at south of Fensford Road, Middleton Cheney. Firstly, I'd like to thank our case officer, Claire Caldwell, for all of her hard work to date and the helpful and balanced way in which she has assisted my client throughout the application. A substantial amount of work, including pre-application discussion, has resulted in the production of a scheme that we consider is well suited to the village and sustainable in every respect. However, we are disappointed that you are now considering the recommendation for refusal today rather than approval. The recommendation is, of course, made following a fine planning balance. The only key impact identified in the report before you is that on the special landscape area. However, the location of the site in the SLA is in itself not a bar to development as set out in your policy NE2 of your recently adopted local plan. From the outset, my client was aware of the site's location in the SLA and therefore set about producing a scheme that not only seeks to avoid harming the landscape, but one that helps soften what is currently a very hard edge to the village when viewed from the east. Otherwise, the quality of and the benefits offered by the proposal are very clear. The scheme comprises a housing mix that directly meets the needs of the village. This has been informed by an assessment of local market housing stock, as well as detailed comments provided by your housing officer. The scheme will provide 50% affordable housing, 10 units in total. My client has already had several inquiries about the availability of the new homes from a combination of downsizers to first-time buyers. The design is entirely in accordance with your design guide. Achieving a compliant scheme has been aided by extensive and detailed input from your officers to ensure that it represents a development that reflects the character of the district. In addition, the proposal includes a level of open space substantially above the council's minimum standard, as well as a landscaping scheme that will deliver significant ecological benefits. A benefit that should not be underestimated is that the scheme is subject of a full planning application that is deliverable immediately. It is not speculative. If approved, this development will be built out within the next 5 years, as my client has already secured significant interest from many small house builders. To provide the council with additional certainty, my client would be prepared to accept a time limit of only 1 year. It is my client's view that the benefits offered by what is a highly attractive scheme on the edge of one of the district's largest and most sustainable villages clearly outweighs any limited harm of the impact on the character of the countryside. I commend members to review the scheme in light of the benefits it will offer Middleton Cheney and the district as a whole. This represents an excellent opportunity to secure a scheme that offers everything your officers have requested of it. On this basis, I respectfully request that you approve this application. Many thanks.
Yes, and that was Jeff Armstrong, the agent for the applicants. Right, well, ladies and gentlemen, who would like to start talking about this one? Do I see anybody? No, there's not a great deal of enthusiasm here at this point.
Can I propose we move to the recommendation?
Well, you can. I mean, I don't want to stop discussion, you know. We don't want to sort of, before we do.
I second that.
Oh, all right. Well, in that case, you're moving me in the direction that you want to have a vote on it. All right. Well, we'll have a vote on it. Leslie Farrell.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Are you proposing the officer's recommendation for refusal?
Yes, that's what's been proposed. Yes.
Okay then. Right. So we, Councillor Dannon.
Is that with the additional highways reason for refusal? Just to clarify.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Okay. So yes, I'm for the recommendation.
Councillor Pritchard.
I'm for the recommendation.
Councillor Bignell.
For.
Councillor Breeze.
For.
Councillor Cooper.
For.
Councillor Hollowell.
For.
Councillor Johns.
For.
Councillor Surgeson Brooke.
For.
Councillor Townsend.
For.
Councillor Elaine Wiltshire.
For.
And Councillor Paul Wiltshire.
For.
That's unanimous then, Chairman. That's refused.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed. So on we go to the final.
Chairman,
Yeah.
can I just interrupt? Sorry.
Oh, yes, if you want to. Yes, go ahead.
There is a further recommendation on this one. In the event that the Planning Committee refused to grant permission, the Assistant Director for Planning and Economy seeks delegated authority to agree the content of a Section 106 in the event that an appeal is received. We need to deal with that.
Leslie, is that true? How you read that? Can I hit the
Chairman? I would certainly like that in the resolution, because it gives us rather more wiggle room to make sure that if the any appeal is successful, you get a decent development.
So in that case, we need a further resolution, do we? And a proposal second. Yes, Councillor John.
Advice, I would add the recommendation that we also approve that.
I'd second that as well.
All right, so we have the formal proposal and second. Is that acceptable, Leslie, if you go through the...
It is, yes. So can we just read the recommendation
Yes,
to
please,
reallocate some of the secured 106 contributions on an alternative schemes to install bollards around the toaster? Oh, no, sorry.
No, you're getting ahead of yourself here.
I am indeed, yes.
We're still on this, Mr. We've gone back to this time.
I think what you've already voted on it, because in the recommendation that Claire wrote in her report was those two reasons for refusal that she quoted, plus she verbally said the highways one, but at the bottom of the report was always that additional recommendation about going to negotiate on the 106 if it went to an appeal. So in a way,
Paul, it actually says a further recommendation, so it's a separate recommendation.
Well, Mr. Barrett says we've got to have a vote,
Oh,
so
okay.
he's the legal eagle on this, so I think we better do it.
Yes. I would say that we're better to vote on it and agree than not vote on it, and then
fair enough.
fight us. So we will vote on that. So I was wrong.
Yeah, you just say what we're voting on. So
yeah, so in the event that the Planning Committee refused to grant planning permission, the Assistant Director for Planning and Economy seeks delegated authority to agree the content of an S106 agreement in the event that the appeal is received. So that's what we're voting for.
Yes.
Okay.
On page 177, if you wonder where it is. Right,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So if this is to agree with
Yeah, but before you do, Claire Corbett, just put your hand up.
I just wanted to point out, Chairman, that the same recommendation was on the Waters Lane application that we considered as well, in the event that the committee refused that application and it went to appeal to get that delegated authority, and that's at the advice of our legal advisors. So it was just to point out that that was included on both applications.
Should we vote on that one as well then?
Well, now this is
Legal.
interesting. Yes, but Mr. Barrett, you better tell us what you think we should do now.
Right, I've just checked the agenda. Clearly, on this one, you're moving the officer's recommendation, and the officer's recommendation clearly includes delegated authority to deal with a 106. Now, of course, on the previous one, you just moved refusal contrary to officer's recommendation, and nobody there, I'm afraid, said anything about a 106. And I think, quite frankly, it would be better if we went back to that previous application and gave the appropriate authority to the assistant director.
All right, so what we have to do then, if this is agreeable, is to have a further vote, a further recommendation from the previous application and one on this one we're currently talking about. No? Paul second.
Just the previous one.
Yeah.
So,
Sorry, Chairman, can I make a suggestion?
Yeah, I'd like you to, yes.
Yeah, I don't think that it really matters how many times the committee decides to delegate agreeing a 106 for appeal purposes. So there could just be one motion that any appeals that arise from this committee meeting is delegated to deal with 106s in connection with those appeals.
Right, is that?
I think that's a sensible way forward, because otherwise we're going to end up with loads of different votes and they're out of sequence and it'll get a bit messy.
Well, as long as Mr. Barrett's happy, I'm go with that.
Yeah, well, I have to say, in a lot of authorities, that's in the Constitution. The planning officer just has that delegated authority. It just isn't in yours. But quite frankly, if the committee was to propose a resolution that authority is generally delegated to the assistant director in any circumstances when you're dealing with an appeal, that would be a good move forward. It will make life a lot more efficient.
Well, are we in a position to do that at this moment in time?
I don't believe that we are, Chairman. I think that we need to vote on, if that's the case, we can vote on that now for anything that's at this meeting, and then if that was something that you wanted to bring to another meeting, then I think that will probably be a better way forward. But I wouldn't really feel comfortable with doing it for every 106 agreement.
I think I have to agree, because obviously in the under the sort of local government access to information and what have you, you're talking about something which isn't actually on the agenda. And I've got a feeling that, you may have some people, I doubt that anybody would argue about it, that technically speaking, they could. So I think it's probably better we have an item on the very next agenda, pretty simple one, saying this is the way we want to proceed in future.
All right, well, you can perhaps advise that for the next meeting. But in the meantime, Leslie Farrell, what are we going to do now? Are we going to have a little vote?
I think that the best thing to do now is to have a vote on 106 agreements at this particular meeting. So anything that we've gone through in this meeting and proposals that we've had, we vote on that now. So it is this further recommendation, but also covers the previous application.
Excellent. And we had a proposer, I think, from Councillor Johns.
We did, and Councillor Townsend seconded that.
Yeah,
so
all right, we're going to go through
vote on that. Mm-hmm. So we'll start with Councillor Dunning then, please.
Yes, 4 then.
And Councillor Pritchard.
4.
Councillor Bignell.
4.
Councillor Breeze.
4.
Councillor Cooper.
4.
Councillor Hollywell.
4.
Councillor Johns.
4.
Councillor Surgeson Brooke.
4.
Councillor Townsend.
4.
Councillor Elaine Wiltshire.
4.
And Councillor Paul Wiltshire.
4.
That's unanimous then, thank you,
Yeah,
Chairman.
good. Okay, I think let's move on, shall we, to the final item, which is to do with 106 contributions in Towcester, and Tracy Hill is the case officer.
Thank you, Chair. This is a relatively short item. It's a report before members to reallocate some of the Section 106 funding that was previously allocated at a site within Towcester. Towcester Town Council have identified that an alternative scheme basically to install bollards around Towcester Recreation Ground has actually is sort of a better use of some of the money that have been allocated for the bus shelters that couldn't be installed. So what I'm going to do is share my screen and provide you with a site plan or an area plan showing the allocation or the location of the bollards which where they want to actually put them. So can you all see that?
Yep.
Can you see those? Okay.
Yes, we can. Yes, yes.
Okay, so we've got 5 locations. One is Plank Houses Road. There's an entrance there to the recreation ground. If you can see my cursor highlighting the arrow. The other one is on the other side of the area, which is Riverside Car Park, which is here. And there's 2 there, which is at the very end, and also there to the side, and also adjacent to the community centre car park, and also a footpath entrance at the end of Islington Road. So these are the this is sort of a street view and also the location of the bollards. The exact type of bollard is still to be agreed with Towcester Town Council and the provider of those, but generally this just gives you an idea of where they are to be provided. So it's within this area. Now, essentially, we consider this to be, as officers consider it to be acceptable alternative scheme to provide these bollards, and it's spending between 7,500 and 8,500 of the amount that was left, which was about £33,000. And as I said previously, when members considered a scheme earlier on this year, that there would be alternative schemes because they can't spend it on the bus stops. So basically that's it. So the recommendation is that members agree with this alternative scheme and just tell Towcester Town Council that they can go ahead and get these installed. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you very much. If you're going to lose that picture, please. Can we, Tracy, can you lose the screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Right. Okay.
You, sorry.
No, that's fine. Anybody got a question for Tracy at all? Yes, I do see Councillor Elaine Wiltshire. You fluttered your hand first.
Yes, thank you. The car park, Riverside Car Park, does it actually back onto the playing field? And have you got enough bollards put in there to stop any encampment of any travellers that are not wanted to be parking on there?
Yes, it does back onto the to the area, but essentially there is a form of hedgerow as well. So the car park does have some, it does immediately go straight onto grass, but there are other groups of hedgerow, which and sort of small shrubs that back onto it as well. So they have done the analysis regarding where the best use of the bollards would be. So there is some other alternative means of enclosure.
Councillor Townsend.
Just I hope that Towcester Town Council don't have red bollards.
I think that was for illustrative purposes.
Yeah, these are likely to also be retractable as well. So potentially, if in the case of emergency, then they can be taken down at some point. But no, they won't be red.
Any other questions from anybody or comments? Obviously, there is a recommendation here, which the two Towcester members here will not be taking part in. But anybody else got a view? No. Well, in that case, I'll be looking for a proposal to for this recommendation. Councillor Townsend, thank you very much. And who are seconding? Who do I see? Councillor Bignell. Yeah. All right. Over to you then for the vote.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is to approve this application. So Councillor Dallin.
Well, I presume I'm not voting on this one.
You can vote. Yes,
all right.
You can vote.
In that case, I'm in favour.
Councillor Pritchard.
4.
Councillor Bignell.
4.
Councillor Breeze.
4.
Councillor Cooper.
4.
Councillor Hollowell.
4.
Councillor Johns.
4.
Councillor Surgeson Brooke.
4.
Councillor Townsend.
4.
Councillor Elaine Wiltshire.
4.
And Councillor Paul Wiltshire.
4.
That's unanimous then. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, indeed it was carried. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of our quite long afternoon, really. But thank you for all staying the course. And those of you watching at home or wherever you are choosing to watch us. The next time we convene is Thursday, the 3rd of September. And it's odds on we'll be still meeting online then. Indeed, you could have a bet that we'll be doing this till the end of this year at least. But still, thank you again. And that ends the meeting at 12 minutes past 6.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.